I will be. Is this better? Okay. Hello, everybody. I am so happy to begin this meeting with our student reports. We're joined tonight by our students from Fairfield Ludlow High School and Fairfield Ward High School, and we are going to begin with Fairfield Ludlow High School, and I just ask our students to introduce themselves, tell us what year you are in, and if you feel like you want to share anything else about any school activities you might be involved in or a little bit about yourself, we would love to get to know you better. So why don't we start with Fairfield Ludlow.
Good evening, everybody. My name's Aniket Martins. I'm a senior at Ludlow. I was here last year as the junior representative and very glad to be back. Participate in a whole bunch of clubs and activities, but the highlights are I'm the president of our Model UN Club and the Math Honor Society.
Hi, my name is Agatha. I'm a junior and this is my first year. A few highlights about my school career right now are that I'm president of Culture Club and I'm also in Model UN and Falcon Council. Thank you.
We'll begin today's reporting on Ludlow's activities, talking about the drama department. As usual, they're going to be putting on a spectacular show of Peter and the Starcatcher on November 4th and 5th. We do encourage all members of the Fairfield community to turn up and support the students and staff who have worked so hard since the beginning of the year. Academically, students are aware that teachers are instituting a changed grading policy this year, which has had a positive impact on mental health and morale. And students are involved, we are also, and know that teachers are involved in crafting a reassessment policy, which there was a pilot week a couple weeks ago, and students have reacted very positively to that. And we look forward to seeing the finalized draft in December. In terms of clubs, Ludlow had our club fair in September where dozens of clubs gathered in the tennis courts and advertised themselves to new students, particularly the freshmen and other underclassmen. And we've enjoyed 2 cycles of our A and B week rotations since then. It's been great as a senior to watch underclassmen join the clubs that I'm in and develop a sense of community and make friends. In terms of sports, we just want to highlight our boys soccer and girls volleyball team for their respective wins against Ward. We are very proud of our Falcon athletes, and go Falcons.
Hi, last Thursday was Domestic Violence Awareness Month and the Raft Club hosted a vigil and the school wore purple. They hosted the vigil at the Hartford Healthcare Arena in Bridgeport, and students also wore orange to celebrate Columbus Day for Indigenous Peoples Day. And last week, Key Club started the annual Thanksgiving food drive, and it will continue until Thanksgiving break. The homeroom with the most donations will win a free homeroom breakfast, and that is a topic of much excitement for most of the high schoolers. And the donations will be the courtesy of the Falcon Nest, which is our student-run restaurant. For college visits, the past few weeks, they've been very exciting. Especially, we've had a lot of junior attendance, which is not the usual, but a overwhelming amount of juniors have elected to go. Colleges from across the world have been sending representatives to meet with the Ludlow upperclassmen. It was very informative, very rewarding, and we're very, very grateful to our new college and career counselor, Mrs. Herman, for her role in arranging everything. Also, the most exciting probably of all of them, the new lunch line. I cannot understate how happy we are about this. Personally, I save half of my sandwich and eat it at breakfast. It's so good, and the positive student response has been absolutely overwhelming. A new world of opportunity, really. And I have some separate announcements here about Culture Club. We look forward to having an optional assembly, October 26th at 12:50 p.m. We encourage all of you to come. It would be very lovely. And it's going to be from 50 minutes to an hour. And it's going to be Dr. Rossi and Dr. Mohammed sharing their experiences as Muslim women right now in the world. It's going to be very exciting, very informative, and we hope to see you there. Thank you.
Thank you. we will now hear from our representatives from Fairfield Ward.
Hi, my name's Mary. I'm a senior at Fairfield Ward High School, and I'm honored to represent my school at these meetings. At Ward, some of the things that I'm involved with, I'm the captain of the girls' swim team. I'm also president of Humanity Now and the Young Dems Club, and I play the oboe in our band.
Hi, my name is Ida Machernik. I'm also a senior at Fairfield Ward High School, and I am honored to be here and to serve my school as a Board of Ed representative this year. I'm captain of the girls soccer team, historian of the Triumph National Honor Society, and the co-president of the Best Buddies Club chapter at our high school. We wanted to start by touching on school spirit recently at Ward. So last Friday, we hosted the fall sport pep rally on our home football field. It was a sunny and beautiful day, and we were happy that our incoming superintendent, Mr. Testani, was able to attend. The pep rally activities included performances by our pep band, musical chairs, and a field goal kicking competition, which I proudly took part of, and I proudly scored one field goal from the 20-yard line. In addition, a new cheer by the pep band and the cheerleaders was introduced to the Stampede, or our student body. And I think that this shows the growing interconnectedness we're trying to work towards between all the areas of our school. And in the week leading up to the pep rally, we had pink shirts for cancer awareness sold during all of our lunch waves. And these were made by our own graphics team, and all of the funds were donated for awareness.
Also recently, our new athletic director, Mrs. DiGiacomo, hosted a fall captain's breakfast for all of the captains of our fall sports. It was a great way for all of us to get together and support each other, and we all had the opportunity to share updates from our season, how our competitions were going, and also share with our fellow captains some exciting upcoming competitions and opportunities so that we could support each other more actively in the future, which was really great.
We also had our homecoming dance for juniors and seniors on October 7th in the small gym, and had over 400 students attend, which was pretty cool.
And on Wednesday, October 12th, Ward proctored the PSAT for grades 9, 10, and 11. Also on this day, seniors were given the opportunity to visit do college visits, and also our College and Career Center was open for seniors to go in to ask questions about future plans, get help with the Common App, which I took advantage of and I thought was very helpful. Also, recently in our College and Career Center, we've also been getting visits from college representatives, which has been a great resource for both seniors and juniors who are looking to learn more about possible colleges and universities that they might be looking to apply to. Thank you, Mrs. Montero, for all of her work, and Mrs. Corsilio as well with her work in that.
In addition, we hosted an activity fair in late September in the courtyard throughout all three lunch waves, where presidents and vice presidents of each of our 55 clubs were able to sign up or set up tables and with posters and sign-up sheets for their club. They advertised what they do to underclassmen who might be looking for something to get involved in at Ward. One thing I'd like to touch on is the Ward Fishing Club, which just started this year by a group of senior boys, and it was very popular. Their table was swarmed the entire time, and I'm pretty sure they got over 100 signups, if I'm not mistaken.
They also had a giant fish which they were throwing to advertise their club. The seniors have had the opportunity to dress up every Friday as part of our Spirit Month in October. Some of the themes have included Career Day, Decades, Pink Day, and this Friday will be Classic Movie Day. On Monday, we will be celebrating Halloween for the seniors, so they'll have the opportunity to dress up as a Halloween costume. And I certainly know that all of our friends have taken advantage of this opportunity and have had a lot of fun. So we really appreciate the opportunity to show our school spirit.
Thank you very much. Do board members have any questions? Mrs. Maxicanelli.
I appreciate the Ludlow representatives referencing some crosstown competitions, but I believe we might have an overly modest girls soccer captain. I was wondering if you could continue your update.
Not to be rude, but we kind of sweeped. We won against Ludlow 4-0 on their home turf at 5 p.m. I think it was October 14th, something like that, but a day to remember for sure.
And needless to say, congratulations to both schools. So just
We unfortunately are very short loss. We'll make it up, very soon. But we did have a fundraiser on that day that I forgot to mention, Culture Club, and we raised money for women in Iran facing oppression right now. It was great. We sold lots of pizza, and yeah.
Any other questions, comments? Mrs. Maxicanelli?
I didn't know if the ward representative, I appreciate hearing what the Ludlow drama production is. Do you know anything about what ward is doing for the fall? No. Okay, thank you.
And so I guess we're going to assume it's not this upcoming weekend, which is great because it's wonderful that they're not conflicting with each other, even though Ludlow's a weekend away, 2 weekends. Thank you so much. It sounds like a lot of fun things are happening. I'm really intrigued by the fishing club. Is it freshwater fishing, saltwater fishing? We may have to reach out, maybe a little board field trip for that. And you sure? No? And please post pictures of Classic Movie Day. I would love to see pictures of what everybody dresses up at. I'm just, maybe just go there in the parking lot and see everybody get out of their cars and check it out. So please share on social media so we can live vicariously through you and be 17 and 18 again and spend our Fridays dressing up as something fun. Well, you know what? And speaking of dressing up for something important, I forgot to start our meeting. Before I go on, as I mentioned to you all before the meeting, you are absolutely welcome to stay for the rest of the meeting, but I also appreciate that you might have some other things that you need to do this evening, so feel free to take your leave if you so choose, and we will see you at the next meeting. And it's really, really, really great to have you here. Definitely, I think, speak for all the board, favorite part of the meeting is hearing from you all and hearing all the wonderful things that are happening at the high school. Okay, before we get to public comment, I would just like to recognize that the Fairfield Public Schools supports Breast Cancer Awareness Month. Fairfield Public Schools recognizes October as Breast Cancer Awareness Month. Throughout October, our school community thinks pink to raise awareness about the impact of breast cancer. Tonight, we as a board wear pink to support breast cancer patients, survivors, their family, and friends. According to the American Cancer Society, early detection of breast cancer and scheduling regular clinical breast exams and mammograms can help increase survival rates. To bring awareness to breast health, students, staff, and parents across the district are pinking up to participate in the Pink Pledge, a month-long campaign held every October to benefit Norma Frame Breast Center. On October 28th, school communities will wear pink in solidarity. Funds raised enable the Norma Frame Center to provide medical excellence and compassionate care to all women regardless of their ability to pay. By declaring October Breast Cancer Awareness Month, the Board of Education encourages all Fairfield students, parents, and members of the community to spread the word about the importance of breast cancer screening and support. So members of the board, I thank you for donning your pink today and look forward to seeing Fairfield pinked out on October 28th. And I'm sure that many other schools will be having fundraisers, so I encourage board members just to reach out and to donate if they so choose to support the center. And with that, we will move on to public comment. At this time, I invite any members of the public who would like to give comment on agenda items to come forward. We allow 3 minutes per comment. We will also take public comment before any voting items, as well as at the end of the meeting. Seeing none, moving on to presentations. First presentation will be a presentation and first reading of course AP Italian. Dr. Tracy, I don't know if you have any opening remarks on this?
Dr. Zavajancic and his colleagues are going to do the talking because I don't speak Italian. So I leave it to them.
Ciao, buonasera.
Good evening, James Zavajancic, Chief Academic Officer, and this evening we have two presentations for you from our World Languages Department. One on AP Italian, which would be essentially the capstone course for students who have completed our course of study with Italian 4. And the second one will be American Sign Language 2, which would be the second course in the sequence of American Sign Language 1, which was approved last year and has really taken off in terms of enrollment. Ms. Frankel began this process last year at this time in terms of introducing these two courses and then working with her colleagues at both high schools in order to develop the curriculum and bring it in front of you today. With that being said, I will turn it over to Ms. Frankel to introduce her staff and the curriculum, which is in the presentation for this evening.
Thank you very much. Can you hear me? Okay. Good evening. My name is Eileen Frankel. I am the World Language Coordinator, grades 3 through 12 in the district, and I teach 2 Spanish classes at Fairfield Ludlow. I'd like to introduce my colleague, Sabrina Klein, who's teaching Level 4 Italian at Ward, and she will help promote the program. We've offered Italian in the district for as long as I can remember, and enrollments have always been strong. So when Fairfield High was split way back in 2003, it was feared that there would not be enough interest to keep both programs alive, and they are very much alive. So at this point, we have 3.2 FTEs in the 2 buildings, 2.0 at Ward, and a 1.2 at Ludlow. You might ask, why offer AP Italian after all these years? As with any AP course, it will be providing students with extra exposure to the language, right? Exposure that sorry about that. Exposure, it's a college level course. It leads to college credit. It challenges students with a more rigorous curriculum. World language is a very marketable skill in our global society and can offer an edge for a candidate that can demonstrate the ability to interact in the target language and demonstrates a deep understanding of cultural nuances. Offering AP Italian will provide the option for heritage speakers, students who have lived in Italy, and those coming from a district where Italian begins in the middle school. The course is directly aligned to the World Language Readiness Standards from 2015 and the AP themes, as all of our AP courses are. The units of study, the 4 units of study, as you can see, parallel AP French and AP Spanish. I'm now going to turn it over to Sabrina Klein to share a little bit more.
My name is Sabrina Klein. I teach at Word. I'm from Italy. I'm from Pisa, the Leaning Tower. I've been here for quite a while, since I got married. And I love that this course is being proposed tonight because I feel that students have the chance to really deepen their ability to read, to interpret reading and audio and video of authentic Italian language, and they can also be able to communicate, especially communicate in their speaking, interpersonal speaking, but also presentational speaking and writing, and they can also learn according to the ACTFL, along with the ACTFL, the culture, the appropriate things to say, and what is it a product that are interested in the Italian language, and so be aware of the situation that might be presented if they decide to travel in Italy or to work for Italian company or whatever they're going to use the language behind the school level, the school line. So I'm really excited, and I hope that it's going to be approved. And I know other districts, they have it. I'm from Trumbull. I know Trumbull has an AP class as well. So I'm glad if we can have it also give this opportunity to the district to have this AP course. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that explanation. So as you can see, there's no cost for materials. We use authentic materials. Teachers find materials online. Everything is authentic, and we then adapt it to the needs of the students. That, however, means that we do need some summer work, and so I'm asking for $1,500 to work over the summer to develop the implementation guide and assessments that would be aligned to the units and to the AP. Anticipated FTE, there is none. It would be part of our level 4, so there would be a combined level 4 AP Italian. That's it. Any questions or comments?
Could you speak a little bit more about the sequencing of the AP Italian class and who you're targeting to take it? I know you mentioned it briefly, but I'm just wondering who it's capturing and who's sitting in the classroom together in the level 4 in AP and how that would work.
So our program begins in grade 9. We do not have Italian in the middle schools. So a typical sequence would be level 1, grade 9, level 2, grade 10, level 3, grade 11, and level 4, grade 12. We do have students, though, who come who are heritage speakers, right? We always talk about the heritage speakers in Spanish, but there are heritage speakers in all of our languages. And very often those students, they're not appropriately placed in a level 1. They know how to say those simple things. Hi, my name is, and I'm tall, and you're short. And so we often don't place them in a level 1 because they simply don't fit. But then they finish up the sequence very early, because if they start with level 2 or level 3, and we've had kids that start with level 3, it's a 2-year program. And so it would really meet the needs of those students. There are some students who come from other districts where Italian does begin in the middle school. And again, for those students, they exit out of our program, sometimes as sophomores, sometimes as juniors. So it will not be a huge population, but it will certainly meet the needs of a small population.
Just one follow-up question. Do you anticipate that there would be students that would complete Italian 3 that would be non-heritage speakers that would then advance to the AP Italian, or no?
Conceivably. We also are giving the stamp testing in all of our levels, and so we have that data, and AP data and stamp data correlate. So if we see a student who is really blowing it out of the water in level 3, then there wouldn't be a reason why we couldn't.
Ms. Jacobson.
I'm just following up. Whoop, sorry, is that working? Following up on that line of questioning. We don't have I don't know if it's missing, James, but the curriculum document isn't in our packets. Was that missing for tonight?
We sent it earlier, so the board has had more time to view it. It was sent in the Friday packet the week prior to this one.
Okay. So, and I remember that. So, I remember that in that document, and correct me if I'm wrong, you put down as a prerequisite Italian 4 in order to go into this AP.
That's the thinking. But again, if we have a student who is excelling, then I think that's a decision that we make in other courses as well. In Spanish and French, there are those students who, again, coming from a different background, have the ability to do the jump. And again, we now have stamped scores. Before we used to do it half blindly, but we have data, and we have stamped data, and it's valid data. So again, looking and seeing the progression would certainly support the move.
Yeah, and I'm totally for this course, don't get me wrong. I'm just interested in the consistency between our languages in terms of what the prerequisites are in order to take the AP. So in Latin, for example, you only have to finish level 3 and then you can take AP. Spanish and French, we say you have to finish level 5 before you can take AP. And now with Italian, we're saying finish level 4 before you can take AP. So I'm just wondering from a vertical alignment as we move forward if we can figure that out a little bit in terms of who we're opening up all of these courses to or not. Going forward, because it just seemed a little misaligned in my just looking at it on paper, which there may be a very good reason in each of those languages why it is different, but I'd like to have a better understanding of why it's different prerequisites. Thank you.
Ms. Kelly, followed by Ms. Mascanelli.
This is quick, and it actually might be more of a question for James than for, it's not Italian specific, but if I look at the course request list and on the class size and stuff, if this gets approved, which I don't see a problem with it on my end, but it would look like to me then that the only class that we don't offer AP in is Mandarin. So I'm just wondering if systemically, if that's something we should talk about, if we have a world language that we have an AP track for all of them more systemically. And then if you could just speak a little bit, that was more of a question / comment, but also if you could just speak to then on that, like, how did Italian get bumped up and not Mandarin? I'm not saying that it should have. I'm just wondering, is it based off the number of requests? Is it based off, I just don't know, is it based on who's available on staff? Just a little bit about how this comes about, because in another year, we're going to be looking at approving a Mandarin AP, which again, I'm not opposed to.
So, excuse me. So the course requests come up every year around this time. I shouldn't say course requests. New courses to enter into our program of studies come up around this time with work with the departments and what the needs are for the students that we've seen historically. As Ms. Frankel had said, there's few students who would fall into this category for AP Italian, but they do exist, and we want to make sure that the course sequence at the end also satisfies them. To my knowledge, and I'll look to Ms. Frankel to confirm or deny, there has not been a need at this point for the AP Mandarin in terms of students getting to that level, and therefore we haven't brought it forward.
Right, I would definitely agree. But I also agree with you that when we bring the entire curriculum to the board in 2025, that's something that we need to consider, because at that point we should be consistent. And so this has been based solely on student need, but you're correct, absolutely correct.
A follow-up on that. Did we have that course at one time?
AP Mandarin?
I thought at some point that we had, and maybe it was just not enrolled for certain years, and then we ended up not running it. Okay. I agree, though. Thank you, Ms. Kelly, for bringing it up. Mrs. Mascanelli.
Thank you. And first of all, obviously, our enrollment numbers are a tribute to what is a very successful program that students start with this and stay with it. And quick personal aside, thank you for the wonderful Italian experience. 2 out of my 3 children went all the way to Italian 4, one of whom is about to be working in Italy, and another one's planning to study there. So testament to the teacher at the table. So thank you so much. I do have a few questions, though, is that I would be interested, Dr. Zavajancic, if we could have the numbers of what might we be talking about, like in our current enrollment, what are the numbers of students who would be eligible for this if it were in play, for this school year, who might have been placed into that. And I also worry because there is that inconsistency that in French, both French and Spanish, we don't consider a student ready for those AP levels until they're at the level 6. And so here I'm concerned that we acknowledge that it's for, and I'm not even getting into Latin, that not only, it just seems like there would be a tremendous disparity in the classroom for the teacher, if we do in fact combine them, teaching to Italian 4 and teaching to AP Italian. I understood it with French 6 and AP French. That made sense to me. There's a slight different, maybe degree of difference in rigor. I don't see how a teacher's going to be able to do this, and that's not a knock on the teachers. It's simply at 2 very, very different levels of proficiency, and I was wondering if you could speak to how you envision that working.
Yeah, it would be like teaching two different classes in the same class. A bit challenges, but I mean, the students at this point will not be that many, and in the curriculum, I can tweak it a little bit and try to teach some stuff together in different situation, in different levels. Definitely would be a little bit challenging, but I don't think we have a number to have just an AP Italian every year because of the nature of the fact that it's not, I mean, mathematically it's not possible for all the seniors to take it.
And I guess what you're capturing is exactly what I'm concerned about. I love the thought. I don't think there's anyone here who doesn't love the thought of offering the course. It's whether it's appropriate. You know, we wouldn't put French 1 with French, you know, with AP French. And I don't know, not having studied it myself well enough, I don't know precisely what that classroom looks like of those Italian 4 students versus an AP student in the same room. And I'm not sure how that is academically appropriate. While I love the course, this is not a knock on AP Italian, I don't see how it's academically appropriate.
I think it will give the chance and the opportunity to some of the students that they want to take the exam AP to be prepared better than just taking a level 4. You know.
Do you anticipate that the AP students would end up needing to work a lot independently?
I'm just saying, especially if they are just students that already have a background knowledge of Italian, it might be easier for them to be able to teach them the extra that they need for the AP test.
So the idea being that probably the AP students will be doing a lot more independently with kind of teacher check-in while the primary teacher focuses on the Italian 4 students.
Yes. The ideal will be to have an AP class, but, you know, because if we need to follow the 4 years before you take a P class, that will not be possible.
Okay, thank you. My other concern was regarding the materials. And while I respect the notion of authentic materials, I'm not sure how that's going to work, for example, between the 2 high schools, if this grew, that we're ensuring some kind of consistent experience and that there's a consistent support for that. And I'm very comfortable with the idea of a textbook, so I'm not quite sure how that works. With literally no textbook and it's all what the teacher can find, I'm not sure what that looks like.
So in world language, from beginning to end, from grade 3 right through grade 12, we do not have textbooks. We haven't had a textbook since 2015. We've had support materials, but we are not following the textbook page by page. So we do have a textbook that we use, but it's mostly the ancillary materials that are used, the videos, the audios, and teachers make up their own stuff, and that's why I'm asking for money over the summer for the 2 teachers, because there would be 2 teachers, to have the time to work and develop some of those assessments. All of our world language assessments are proficiency-based, which means that it's very clear what a intermediate mid student needs to do and what an intermediate high student needs to do. Taking AP, most students hit that intermediate high range. Very few AP students actually get into the advanced range. So there's not that much of a difference between intermediate mid and intermediate high. And some of that is the way a paragraph gets structured, right? Using more paragraph style rather than sentences that are somewhat isolated and jumbled. Using a little bit more advanced grammar. And so those are the AP rubrics. Those are the rubrics that we use in the department for proficiency-based modeling. And just given the last summer when we began the ASL, we did have 2 teachers working over the summer, our 2 ASL teachers. They created so much material, and they can attest to that when they come up here, that everything they're doing basically is the same.
So that's a great point, the fact that the 2 teachers doing that summer work would be doing that together. So that's a great point. So, all right, thank you very much.
Any other questions? Thank you. I support this class. I do share some of Mrs. Maxon-Canelli's concerns about just both groups of students being in the same classroom. And I would be interested to see how that level 4, I could see potentially the bar raising for those students, and potentially some of those students being ready potentially to take the AP themselves. I'd be curious to just know the classroom dynamics. I foresee, group work, and a concern, but I think that it's doable if you believe it's doable, and I think it's a great opportunity for our students to have this opportunity to take the AP exam, and looking forward to hearing more about it.
And I do think raising the bar is totally accurate, because that mixed group will raise the bar for the level 4 students.
And I think that when you go to another country and spend an extended period of time and you're immersed in the language, just by being in that environment, almost forced to some extent. But it'll be exciting to see how this plays out for future classes. So thank you. As always, if anybody has any questions about the curriculum documents that were forwarded in the Friday packet or the presentation today, please forward them to Dr. Tracy, or actually, why don't we just forward them right to Dr. Zavajancic, given the transition between superintendents over the next 2 weeks before our next board meeting, and he will get them to the appropriate staff. Thank you.
Thank you very much, and thank you.
All right, moving on, presentation and first reading, of course, American Sign Language 2.
Our next course up, and again, Ms. Frankel will introduce the folks who are with her today, is the continuation of the course passed last year, which is American Sign Language 2.
Thank you very much again. I'd like to begin by introducing our ASL teachers. Liza Ehlers, who teaches 5 level 1 classes at Fairfield Ludlow. Tina Marsan, who's teaching 2 at Ward, 1 at Walter Fitzgerald, and she's also a .4 teacher of the deaf in the district. And our interpreter, Kate Gavigan. Thank you all for being here tonight. It was literally 1 year ago today that I came before you to introduce the idea of launching an ASL program. At the time, I had proposed this to be a 1.0 position, and I remember being asked by somebody over on my left, would it be easy to find a teacher? I'll confess now, I lied. I was hopeful. I knew I would be persistent, but we all know that filling world language positions are difficult nowadays. Nevertheless, here we are, 1 year later, with 2 very committed teachers who are providing a very unique opportunity for a wide range of learners at each of the 3 high schools in the district. Let me share with you just a few comments, because we did a survey and what kids are saying about ASL. I thought it would be cool to learn ASL. I thought it would be a good life skill that I could benefit from in no matter what field I work in when I'm older. Because my family has a history with ASL, and I think it would be valuable to learn. I worked with a kid that was deaf in the summer of 2021, and I learned some sign language, and I really enjoyed it, and I want to keep learning it. I signed up for ASL because I wasn't great at any other language provided, and I wanted to start fresh. Also, ASL gives me so many different opportunities. This one will make you cry. Because I'm dyslexic, and having a way to learn a new language with the same alphabet is the best way for me, and I am almost positive money dyslexics feel the same way. I wanted to learn something where I can see, because I don't function well when I have to write stuff down. I also took this because I have someone in my family who's deaf, and they can just read lips really well, but I wanna surprise them with me knowing sign. I've always wanted to learn ASL. My mom told me about it, and ever since I've dreamed of learning about it. I think knowing ASL is so helpful and creates a better place for deaf people. And the last one I'll read, they're all amazing, but because I wanted to talk to my mom's uncle and also talk to the gorilla at the Bronx Zoo. So, there. So the course fulfills the state world language requirement of 1 credit. As we grow the program, students in ASL will be able to meet college entrance requirements and will in fact be eligible to obtain the seal of biliteracy upon graduation. Our program is very different than many of the programs in the state. We have a deaf teacher and another who has direct ties to the deaf community. This does in fact make our program unique and powerful. Adding a second year of ASL to the World Language Program in Fairfield ties directly to the primary goal of the World Language Department to communicate effectively and to interact with cultural competence. And the curriculum is aligned directly to the National World Readiness Standards, which were released in 2015. The units of study parallel the units in our other level 2 courses. At this time, I will briefly turn it over to my 2 colleagues who will share just a little bit about what it really feels like.
So I'm Tina Marsan. I'm the ASL teacher, and I'm nervous. So when I'm nervous, this is what I do is teach, because it's my happy place. So Liza, I want to teach these guys how to say good evening.
Let's put your hand up to your mouth with the sign that would come directly from your mouth to your lower base hand. So if you're a right-handed person, you would almost be like blowing a kiss almost from your lips to your base hand. And that's the sign for good. And then you flip the hand over and tap it lightly, and that's good evening.
Excellent job. So I had the I'm very excited to have joined Fairfield Public Schools in the adventure that we're on. There are not very many other high schools in the state that provide American Sign Language as an option for a world language. This is extremely exciting. And the best part about it is that we have a teacher who's deaf, because that's her native language. My husband is deaf, and we use ASL at home. And Liza and I have worked together before in the past and are a great team, a hearing and deaf team, moving forward and teaching together as a team. Even though we're at different schools, we are collaborating constantly. We are right on it and working together, and that gives the kids a really unique experience. I'm gonna turn this over to Liza, but I do want to say that the kids are really excited. They're talking about it. They're outside of class talking about it. They're inside class talking about it. They're learning. Every single one of my students has a basic communication and conversation with me, and we're only 8 weeks 8 weeks in. It's amazing. I teach over 60 students, and every one of them signed up for this class. Students, to provide them an opportunity other than an auditory language, to provide that visual option for them, there are students that are just thriving. So thank you.
Thank you for the opportunity to be here. Obviously, you know I'm deaf. I do not have an interpreter with me for class time. I have an interpreter here this evening for this meeting, but we use sign. I'm looking at their expressions. I'm looking at how the students are producing. They're communicating every day, and I have 100 students. And they are falling in love with sign language, and it's very exciting. They ask me questions. They like Tina said, they're picking it up so quickly. I'm asking them, slow down, tell me this again. And it's exciting. So many of the students have conversations with me in full sentences already. And this is a benefit for them to have a deaf adult as a model and as a teacher. I have so much to share about language and values and so much in my culture that I long for them to understand as we go deeper. And there's so much out there in the deaf community that they will learn as well. And so I'm looking forward to them, and I'm looking forward to the support that the deaf community will eventually benefit from as well. So because of my knowledge and my experience, I feel like I have what it takes to teach and show compassion. And I wanted to introduce you to a very special student of mine who came tonight. Speaking of special students.
Said they're very excited about ASL. Good evening. Thank you for having me and allowing me to participate in this meeting. Just to briefly introduce myself, my name is Deirdre Martin, and my sign name is... I grew up attending Fairfield Public Schools, and I went on to graduate from St. John's University in Queens, and I'm currently employed by the town of Seymour as a police officer. For the past 8 months, I've been studying ASL with Liza, and I've completed ASL 1, and I'm scheduled to complete ASL 2 in about 3 weeks. The reason behind my motivation to learn ASL stems from a serious motor vehicle crash that I responded to on duty, where the victim was deaf. I was frustrated that I was unable to communicate with her effectively, and I feel that if I had been provided with the opportunity to take ASL class in high school, I may have been able to better comfort and assist this victim. With that being said, I'd like to ask the board to consider this proposal to offer your students ASL II. Although my story is just one example of how ASL can be used in a career, there's other applications for this language as well. Learning ASL could potentially open doors for your students for future careers, such as audiology, teaching, speech-language pathology, interpreting, psychology, and that's just to name a few. In conclusion, offering ASL could really showcase the Fairfield Public Schools' commitment to inclusivity and accessibility. And I just want to say thank you again, and Liza's the best teacher I've had in ASL. The only teacher, but she's the best teacher I've had.
Thank you all for your comments. Just to wrap it up, I'm again asking for curriculum development over the summer. Again, based on what we accomplished this past summer in 2022, it's absolutely mandatory because as the question came up already, how do both sides of town, how do both teachers maintain the same curriculum? And that's what the summer was for. We worked, I think, 6 different days, and we were able to get through the entire curriculum. There's a lot to learn in Fairfield, and so as we move forward, some of the academic expectations and summative versus formative is already established, but that had to be talked about, and then there was time to create assessments and implementation guide. And so again, both of these women are really doing the same things in different sides of town, each with their own little perspective to it, but we are offering the same course to all of the students. So I'm asking for $2,500 to continue to do that. $1,500, again, if there are some films we could purchase, some other teacher resources, online resources. This as well, there is no textbook, as again, we don't have in the other courses. And I'm again asking for another 1.0 anticipated FTE. Taking a brief survey of the 106 students that are presently enrolled in ASL I at Ludlow, 78 are planning to continue. There's another group that's unsure, but 78 are presently committed. We've already heard that there's lots and lots of talk all over about how much fun the course is, how useful it can be. So what will our level 1 look like next year? We don't know. We were not able to offer ASL to all of the students who had asked for it in the spring, so we had to cut that back a bit in both buildings. So we really don't know what it's going to look like, but it certainly looks like there would be 0.4 level 2 at Ludlow, and very possibly a 0.4 at Ward. And at Walter Fitzgerald, I also asked, it's going over extraordinarily well. It's meeting the needs of those kids as well, and so the thought is that there would be an ASL II at Walter Fitzgerald as well. So I think a 1.0 is a realistic expectation. Questions or comments?
I thank you very much for this. I'm very excited to see how quickly this has taken off and become a real popular offering in our high schools. I know this has been talked about for some time. My middle guy, my son Sam, actually is now at RIT, the Rochester Institute of Technology, which is also the home to the National Technical Institute for the Deaf, and it has been a remarkable experience for him to be in a place where hearing and deaf culture exist side by side. I mean, at their sports games, this is remarkable. They'll chant in RIT, like everyone's up there with doing. It's just, but it's remarkable. It's an experience that I think our high schoolers are really hungry for and will be lucky to have. So I am enthusiastically in favor of this, and thank you for bringing it to us and continuing on.
Ms. Rotelli.
This makes me so happy. I'm very excited for this program to move forward and expand. I'm very excited for our students to get the opportunity to take an ASL II. As I mentioned before, my sister is an ASL interpreter. She's in another state, so. But the opportunity for our students who struggle with learning disabilities, who have to maintain their world language credits to graduate and have an opportunity to take something that's visually based is so amazing. So I love this. You have all of my support. Very excited.
Ms. Guernsey.
Thank you so much for this presentation. I'm going to jump on that bandwagon, and I'm just so proud that we were able to offer ASL 1. I grew up in a town in Massachusetts with a very large deaf community, so this kind of program is not unusual to me. And, you know, like Mr. Peterson said, I mean, I grew up in a church that had a deaf choir, so like the idea that this program can introduce our students to the deaf community and culture is as important to me as the conversations they're having. So I'm just so ecstatic about this and so happy for the students that can take advantage of the program.
Mrs. Maxinelli.
Well, I'll start with the question and then the comment. How difficult do you envision it to fulfill that 1.0, to find that? Like, what was the pool like in order to hire these two wonderful educators, and do you anticipate difficulties?
I think I've broken
Honestly.
I guess you're going to be lying again.
I've honestly broken the barrier. So when I started my journey and I was getting nervous, I started posting everywhere possible. And so there were people that started to apply in California, Texas. I followed up all of them. There were some great people. There was a person in California who wants to come back east, but it wasn't time. Things are expensive here. When she looked at housing, she was like, I don't think we can do it yet. Not that she may or may not come, but we went out to dinner prior to the meeting, and we were talking a little bit about the process I went through. And so as soon as I checked Apple Tracks twice a day, and as soon as there was a name that appeared, even though the application was not complete, I called. Hi, my name is Eileen Frankel, blah, blah, blah. And so Tina can contest to that. When we were, again, a little bit in tentative territory, again, I just went from contact to contact to contact, and we've got two people. We've broken the barrier. We've broken the barrier. So to find another person, we have connections at this point. So honestly, I will not come back to you October 2023 and tell you that I lied again. I had to confess. But it won't happen another time because we have the basis.
That's a great point about that connection. So thank you for that assurance, because it's wonderful to go forward with this. Actually, I did have one other question for Tina. Is that how is it with sections of 27? Because obviously, as the administration looks to use up and assign our FTE, has that worked?
To be honest, when I saw 27 students on my roster, I was scared because
I bet you started teaching really quickly.
Well, one of the most important things and what I love about this room and this setup right here is that everyone has visual attention, has the visual access to everyone else. So being at Ward, the classrooms are small, the numbers were big. I had to bring in like 5 desks and people were like, what? But we managed. We make it work. We work it out. And honestly, I don't feel that nervous. I'm able to have contact with each student every day. So I feel good because of their motivation, and I would love a bigger classroom, but.
All right, thank you. And then just the final comment, in my 11 years on the board, I think this might be the one and only course that the moment I saw it on the agenda, my reaction is I don't even need the first read and then a second meeting. This was just, I think we knew we were paving the way for this last year when we got the presentation. I'm at a school that also offers the course, and I know what a robust enrollment it has, and also know what, I appreciate Mrs. Guernsey introducing the idea that it's not just the deaf language, it's the culture, and just what an invaluable experience for our students. So very enthusiastic about the course.
Yes, Mr. Peterson?
Just very briefly, in terms of the space, you're in a regular classroom. Has it been any exploration of working in another space, a larger space, something like the Black Box Theater at Ward?
So I did put in my concern about having a classroom maybe a little bit larger for that, and we're going to look into that, absolutely.
Thanks.
Ms. Kelly?
We're already running late, so I'm just going to echo all the praises of the class. I fully support the class. And I'm aware that we are unable to clone these wonderful human beings. But I'm looking at the numbers of the requests versus, and I know it's not just classroom size. I know scheduling might not have worked and that kind of stuff, but 92 it looks like, if I'm reading that correctly, requested, and 54 is that were granted, or is that the column heading rostered, I guess. And again, barring the issues of how difficult it is to find staffing, and coming from someone who doesn't like to spend money, I would fully support increasing our human resources. I'm just throwing that out there, that come budget season, I would be in full support of increasing our human resources to support this class that has so many extra benefits to our students. And anecdotally, to you saying you're not sure what enrollment may look like or whatever for next year, I can tell you that I have a rising 8th grader, and the only class she has asked me if she can take is American Sign Language. So that is the only class. That's the only thing I have heard of. So they're coming.
I want to thank you, Ms. Frankel. You and I are meeting for the first time across the table here, but thank you for your leadership in all of these areas, and to your very talented colleagues for a very impressive, fascinating, and powerful presentation. The kids are lucky to have you.
Thank you, and I want to just echo everything that was said. Really, just a happy moment right now that we have this for our students, for our district, and I support, Ms. Kelly's sentiment. If we can provide more teachers to provide this to our students, I would also be in favor of it. Really a feel-good moment, and what a wonderful opportunity for just broadening our students' horizons on so many levels. So thank you, and look forward to seeing at our next meeting.
Right. Thank you very much. And if I could just say, maybe mark your calendar for October 24th, 2023, because we'll be back with Sign Language 3.
Thank you. For the record, I just want to welcome Mr. Asa, who is a late arrival, who is, I told everybody that you were going to be late, but I wanted to recognize, sporting the pink. Look, if anybody in the audience is in need of a pink t-shirt for the 28th, I have a bag of extras. See me after the meeting. All right, moving on to old business approval of course Physics of Music. The Board of Education approved the course Physics of Music. Can I have a motion? Ms. Jacobson, seconded by Mrs. Gerber. Any questions? Further questions on this? Okay, seeing none, we will take it to the public. Invite any members of the public who would like to give comment on this item to come forward. Seeing none, back to the board for a vote. All in favor? Ms. Fratelli, Ms. Jacobson, Ms. Guernsey, Mrs. Gerber, Mrs. Vitale, Mr. Asa, Ms. Maxinelli, Mr. Peterson, Ms. Kelly. Motion carries 9-0. Moving on, approval of policy 6146, students' requirements for graduation. The Board of Education approved policy 6146, students' requirements for graduation. Can I have a motion? Mrs. Maxinelli, seconded by Mr. Asa.
So again, my apologies that you did not have this hard copy at our last meeting. So 2 parts to this policy. The first, again, just is to remind you from our last meeting that these changes came to us at the request of staff and after policy committee discussion. well, that leads to the second part of the conversation, but we were very much in favor of this, that once again, this easily fulfills what the state is asking in terms of the mastery credit. It is a completely local discretion for how we achieve that mastery credit, so altering this is not an issue for the state. And for us locally, again, the fact that so many students are in a place where they cannot achieve or are not in a position of achieving the 6 out of 6, which was the current policy, is due, and not due to students trying and not making it. It's due to our not having been able to offer them the opportunity to do it in the first place. So that's the first part with this policy, so I will pause there before I go to the second part to see if there are any questions.
Any questions? Seeing none?
Okay, and then the second part, just to give you the heads up, that the conversation we had in policy prompted a much larger discussion regarding how we want to actually achieve this mastery credit. Do we want it rooted in the academic expectations at all, or would we prefer to embed those expectations differently in the curricula and focus instead solely on what we are now deeming the content aspect? So this is a conversation that will continue. I just wanted to apprise the board that we very possibly might be revisiting this. We did not want to make a decision on something so important at just that one policy meeting. We wanted staff to have the chance to talk about it. We certainly wanted our new superintendent to have the chance to be apprised of what we were talking about and be able to weigh in. But again, just the heads up that we could and this is something that we would be looking at in the very near future because it could impact the class of 2024. So we do not want to drag our feet on this because that would provide direction to staff, to our counselors, to the administration in terms of what kind of plans they are coming up with students to achieve that mastery credit. And do they have to be both skills and content focused? So again, just wanted to apprise the board that there's a very good possibility this will be coming back before us in the near future. To Dr. Hatzis, I believe, is he still here? Yeah, so again, and Mr. Cavan, I hope I accurately captured our conversation from policy. If you think there's anything important that I missed that the board should be aware of, I would certainly invite you to chime in.
Hearing nothing from the gentleman in the audience, I'm going to assume that we're good with that. Any questions, further questions on the policy before we take it to the public for comment? Seeing none, any members of the public like to give comment on this before we take it to the vote? Seeing none, back to the board for a vote. All in favor? Motion carries 9-0. Okay, moving on, approval of policy 6999, students district provided distance learning. Their recommended motion that the Board of Education approve policy 6999, students district provided distance learning. Mrs. Maxine Cannelli made the motion, seconded by Mr. Peterson.
So again, this change comes to us. Thank you, Dr. Tracy, for bringing it to our attention that we need to take action on this. The process of deleting this language will also delete the accompanying administrative regs. I will say that you are looking at a draft that did not have the Roman numeral #1 deleted, so that does need to be done as well. We already voted on that in policy, so I don't feel the need to do an amendment at the table because that's what it should have looked like. So this should just be distance learning for necessary changes in program delivery.
Any questions? Dr. Tracy?
Just a comment. This brings us into line with current state and local health department guidance that COVID now should be treated as any other respiratory illness and not categorized with its own particular requirements. So thank you for moving that forward.
Any questions? Seeing none, we'll take to the public. Invite any members of the public to give comment. Seeing none, back to the board for a vote. All in favor? Motion carries 9-0. Okay, moving on to new business, approval of FSAA MOU. Before I put the motion before us, I'm going to actually ask for a motion that the board, this is a personnel matter related to collective bargaining. Take a quick executive session. Can I have a motion for the board to go into executive session? Ms. Guernsey, seconded by Ms. Jacobson. And Dr. Tracy, we're just going to, can we shoot into central office? All right, we are out of executive session. Thank you for your patience. All right, I'm going to put this motion forward that the Board of Education approve the MOU between the Board of Education and the Fairfield School Administrators Association. Mrs. Maxon Cannella, can I have a second? Mrs. Gerber, all in favor? Motion carries 9-0. Thank you. All right, moving on. First reading of policy 616251, Students Survey of Students. Mrs. Maxon Cannella?
Sorry. Thank you. So this was a policy change that came to us from staff. Nancy Burns brought it to my attention, first of all, that we outright had an incorrect policy number a number of years ago. We did a major number readjustment, and this was one that got past us, the one that's embedded within the policy information. And then the few other changes that were in here were things that that Ms. Burns requested. And so we bring this to you today. I told Mrs. Burns that she did not need to be here to wait around this long for this policy to come forward. And if you have questions for me now that I can't answer, then I'll direct them to her. But otherwise, if I could have questions, as always, in advance of the next meeting, it would be very helpful.
Any questions? Okay. All right, moving on. First reading of policy 5113, students, attendance, excuses, dismissal.
Okay, I just find of interest, if you look on the very last page, if you think you've seen this one a number of times or heard of it coming before us a number of times, you are correct. I wish I could tell you that this is the last time in the next year or so, and I have no intention of doing so. So there are a number of changes in here that you have before you to consider. So I can't presume to know where your questions will lie, so I just leave it to the board that if there's anything that you've looked over and have a question for me now, I can try to address. And if I can't, we will get you answers before the next meeting.
Any questions? Mrs. Gerber.
So the changes here, because it is so funny looking at all these dates. I'm like, wow, I've really been on the Board of Ed for a long time, and I've looked at this policy a lot of times. So just, I mean, there are some significant changes here. So these are the result of?
Almost entirely statute-driven.
Right. So this is something that we have to do. It's not something that we just decided to revisit, that this is?
That is correct. That's not to say that there wasn't some choice with some language in here. So I would certainly recommend that if the board looks at this and finds anything objectionable, it does not hurt to bring it to our attention so that we can reply with, you may object, but we need that, versus that was something that policy decided to have in there. So it's definitely worth a read. This is not all, we have no choice about all of this. I will say we did not create it.
Okay, so I guess one question then, since you did bring it up, is are there any specific areas where the policy committee did deviate significantly from the statute? Anything that you felt, I don't know, I'm just trying to get a sense here.
Actually, the primary deviation was from our own policy to get back in line with state statute. We had the previous version of the policy actually took a harder line on some aspects of attendance, which also means it increased the numbers we had to report as a district for truancy. And so we've actually relaxed the Fairfield policy to a degree, but it's to the level of the state as opposed to a more extraordinary language.
Got it. Okay, thank you.
Thank you for the question.
Anyone else? Mr. Peterson.
I would just like to point out that on page G.
Oh. Damn it.
I only found one minor thing, and on item G, when a student is true in capital T, in superintendent.
Got it.
Thank you.
Thank you. I see his hand go up and it.
All right, moving on. First reading for deletion, policy 6159, instruction, special education.
So both of these, if it's with your permission, I'll just address both at the same time.
Yes, we'll give you
So that both of these are ones that came to us from Mr. Mancusi as being essentially utterly unnecessary to have. Again, these are part of that whole huge packet of 2004 policies that we've never even looked at. They really serve no purpose because of federal law. And again, Mr. Mancusi, I hope I'm capturing it accurately, so we are just looking for deletion. They will not be replaced.
Any questions for Mrs. Maxinelli or Mr. Mancusi on this? All right. Seeing none, so just for the public, we took care of D and E with that. The first reading of deletion for policy 6171 was E. Moving on, approval of minutes. Recommend a motion that the Board of Education approve the September 29th, 2022 and October 11th, 2022 Board of Ed regular meeting minutes. Mrs. Gerber, seconded by Ms. Guernsey. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor? Motion carries. 8, and Ms. Jacobson. Oh, I'm sorry. All in favor? Ms. Guernsey, Mrs. Gerber, Mrs. Vitale, Mr. Asa, Ms. Maxinelli, Mr. Peterson, Ms. Kelly. All opposed? Abstentions, Ms. Moving on to the superintendent's report.
Okay.
Dr. Tracy.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I want to comment first on the racial balance plan, which, as you know, was adopted by this board on August 30th. A team of Board of Education members and district leaders, including Superintendent Testani, will present the board's proposed amendment to our racial balance plan before a meeting of the State Board of Education on Wednesday, November 2 in Hartford. I believe that the Board of Education has adopted a worthy and ambitious plan that seeks to improve educational outcomes for all of our students while also bringing the district into compliance with the state racial imbalance law. The meeting of the State Board of Education will convene at 9:30 a.m. and will be live streamed. At this point, we do not know precisely when our turn will come. Second, I wanted you to know, and I wanted to take note of the fact that on October 20th, I distributed a document entitled Administrative Guidance Regarding Our Obligations to Lesbian, Gay, Bisexual, Transgender, Queer, Non-Binary, and Gender Non-Conforming students and their families. This document was written in response to faculty requests in a meeting that Mr. Smoller and I had in the late summer, teachers asking for some guidance in this area absent any current board policy. In addition to clarifying our legal obligations here, my guidance to the staff essentially makes 3 points. First, we are obligated to make sure that students who express a sexual orientation or a gender identity that differs from the majority, that they receive the same respect and educational opportunities as are extended to any child, and where necessary, that they are protected from the bigotry and bullying of others. Second, that we need to remember that as a school system, we have neither the mission nor the expertise to provide specific direction to young people in this area. These are personal matters to be dealt with by our students and their families, supported by appropriate community resources. And third, we consider the families whom we serve as our partners in our work with their children. We also respect our students' right to privacy. And therefore, when confronted with a question of whether or not to share and communicate with parents about a student's sexual orientation or gender identity, staff members should seek the guidance of their building administrator, and we in turn will seek legal guidance. The lawyers could not write me a sentence that would cover this situation. It all depends on the circumstances of the individual child, whether any such communication would be appropriate. So the guidance to our faculty members is don't take this into your own hands. Bring that to your building administrator, bring that to the superintendent, get the necessary advice particular to that situation, and respond accordingly. Of course, my guidance in this area will be superseded by board policy or by the directives of Superintendent Testani, but I hope that in the meantime it will prove useful to our staff and students.
Dr. Tracy, we have a question, Mrs.
Sure.
Canale.
Yeah.
Not a question, just a statement. I just want to thank Dr. Tracy. I know that there had been a lot of questions out in the public all this spring, and I appreciate that Dr. Tracy reached out, met with the staff, heard their concerns, as well as hearing out our parents, who I think very much appreciated being heard. And he brought it to my attention in July that he was looking to try to, ultimately the staff question is what do we do going forward? What is some guidance? And it was very clear very quickly that between what policy committee had to do, that we were not going to be able to craft a policy quickly enough for the start of the school year. And so Dr. Tracy got to work on this document, had it ready for the most part quite some time ago, wrestling with attorneys and trying to pin them down for some language. Made this a much more protracted process, and I just want to thank Dr. Tracy for seeing this through and being able to hand it off. You know, we can, as a policy committee or as a board, decide if we want to bring it to the level of policy, but I think as a place to give guidance to our staff so that it is also consistent guidance throughout the district, I just found this to be a very powerful document, as certainly at least as a starting point, and I very much appreciate your seeing this through. So thank you.
You're welcome. I hope it's helpful for as long as you need it.
And I echo, thank you, Dr. Tracy. I think it's important, and thank you to any teachers that you work with and administrators to, to move this forward, to give guidance to our teachers, to give guidance to our administrators, and to really put some regulations in place and guidance in place so our staff can, support those students in the best way possible. So I thank you for that, and look forward to policy committee potentially reviewing this in the future.
All right. Thank you. Thank you very much. Some additional good news. We're going to be receiving $143,000 worth of state assistance to help us deal with the rising cost of our school nutrition program. As you know, there have been supply chain issues, inflation issues, and the state has stepped up with some additional resource in this area. Ms. Laborious has been advising me on this, and she's here to answer any questions that you might have, but my assumption is that we will happily take the money.
Ms. Kelly?
The pun is intended here, but there is no free lunch. So I'm just wondering if this money comes with any strings.
Ms. Laborious, are there any strings or cellophane wrappings or anything else associated with our acceptance of these dollars?
Not that I'm aware of, but I do know that always happens. This is the second installment. We did get supply chain money earlier this year as well in August. So it's about $300,000. Well, the string is there's a little bit of work we have to do. So we show what the milk prices were before, pandemic, and then what we're paying for milk now. And then we'll follow up with produce if we have to draw down the full amount of the funds. So it's just a little bit of work involved, but it does give us about $300,000 more in revenue this year.
While you're there, sorry. We also did we approve increasing the cost of the school lunches? Is that just not even making a dent in covering some of the expenses?
So this year we're still in the free program. So there was an extension also in addition to that, additional grant funds of about $1.2 million. That's going to take us through probably January, maybe now February, for being able to offer free lunch for all students in the district. So, and we have notified families. They do still have to apply. If any families are listening, they had to have applied by the October 12th deadline for our, free and reduced status for when we do return. And so we'll be kind of assisting families through that transition process as we draw the grant funds down.
Mr. Peterson?
I'm just thinking how this will factor into budgeting for the coming year, especially if this is a one-time state grant. I don't know, do we have any sense of whether this is going to be continued? Because food price inflation has not slowed significantly. Other areas of inflation have slowed. We certainly are a long way from seeing any food deflation.
Yeah, it will continue to be a challenge. The good news is this does signify that the USDA is aware of that and committing money towards it this year. This is the way the state of Connecticut was using it, but it is a national program. And so, it's going to continue to be monitored and watched federally for the upcoming year as well. We are in a decent position revenue-wise with our school lunch program because of the fact that we've been in the free, offering the free meals and receiving the reimbursement during this period of time.
Mrs. Maxcanelli?
3 questions. So again, just to clarify that this money is entirely separate from the money we are receiving in order to be able to offer those free lunches.
That's correct.
Secondly, just a reminder in terms of as prices go up or down, but this has no impact on our operating budget because this is that separate lunch program budget, which is managed separately and, again, is entirely separate.
Correct. It has its own entity, so it has its own tax ID number and its own set of rules. Correct. So it operates completely independent from the operating budget, with the exception that, as you experienced during the pandemic, were they to run in the red, the district does have to make up that difference. And there's rules when we run in the black at the close of fiscal year that we'll continue to apprise the board of as we close out this fiscal year as well. So
Thank
it's
you.
separate, yes.
And then third question, actually, you mentioned that October 12th deadline, but how does that work where with the policy we just passed that if we have students who are getting into a deficit with their lunch debt, that we have a part of our policy is that administration reaches out to those families to educate them about possibilities. So aren't they able to join the free and reduced lunch program if they qualify at any point in the year? I'm just genuinely wondering that.
They had to have met that deadline. There are some exceptions, but if I can get those to you, I don't know what they are off the top of my head, but they are to have met that deadline. So unfortunately, the resources that we would offer them would be food supports for outside of the free and reduced options. In addition, the application information for the next cycle.
Didn't realize when we were doing that with the budget. With that policy. So that's kind of unfortunate. But all right, thank you.
Any other questions? Moving on.
Next item, more good news. The Connecticut Association of Boards of Education informed me this morning that the Fairfield Public Schools will be awarded the Bonnie B. Carney Award of Excellence for Educational Communications in 3 categories: the Spotlight Newsletter, the district's 22-23 budget, and the 22-27 district improvement plan. So that will be recognized at the upcoming CABE convention, and I did extend my congratulations to Andrea Clark, our former communications director, who had a hand in all of this work. So she appreciated the kudos, and for those of you at the convention next month, you can hear your name mentioned. Finally, I want to turn to the issue of the illustrative math program. As the board is well aware, the implementation of this program in our secondary schools this year has proven to be challenging and controversial. And in response, in order to figure out what our next steps should be, I've had numerous conversations with Dr. Zavajancic, Dr. Rasmussen, and several members of our mathematics faculty. Our purpose tonight is to briefly recount the purpose and history of the program in Fairfield, and then to switch to a description of the way that we believe is most sensible to proceed. And from the outset, I want to make clear that the we that I'm talking about is the 3 of us, Dr. Rasmussen, Dr. Zavajancic, and myself. While we've received input from members of this board and many members of the faculty, and I believe the approach we're suggesting is responsible to the concerns that we've heard, responsive that is. The plan that Dr. Rasmussen is going to present to you is ours alone at this point. It's not very long, 10 or 11 slides. What I would appreciate is if we can give him a chance to get through it so you can see where we think you should go, and then we'll be opening up to questions. I'm not requesting any action from the board tonight. I know that Superintendent Testani will want to get his arms around this issue when he arrives next week, and I'm sure he'll be coming back with a plan to move things forward. But I thought it was important for you at this point to hear what the three of us feel is the best way forward at this point. So with that, I turn it over to Dr. Zevajanchik and Dr. Rasmussen.
Thank you very much. I'm glad to be back here to talk about the role of illustrative math as we move forward in our secondary mathematics classroom. And ultimately, as Dr. Tracy kind of talked about, we want to kind of look at this as a responsive approach to kind of meet the needs of our teachers, meet the needs of our students moving forward. And one of the missions that we've always has been our grounding document, and is why it helps make us decisions, is this vision of the graduate. We really want to be focusing on providing opportunities for teachers, and students, to be innovators, communicators, collaborators, critical thinkers, responsible citizens, and goal-directed, resilient learners. And this is really kind of what was the basis of us kind of looking at these various resources and recommending in the past. And ultimately, as we kind of look at it, as Dr. Tracy talked about, as we believe that the illustrative math resource supports this vision of the graduate very well, and will hope yield important benefits for our students, because this is the types of tasks and activities that will kind of actualize the vision of the graduate. And also that we believe that we need to honor and develop our work of our teachers and our students as we build these pedagogical experiences to support the vision of the graduate. And we'll kind of be touching on that and some of the things of what we have learned along the way. All right. Just kind of giving a quick overview in terms of the illustrative mathematics philosophy. This really kind of comes out of this philosophy that the resource is built on the principle that all students are capable learners of mathematics. And similarly, that to be a capable learner of mathematics, we believe that students learn best by doing math. They're encouraged to use their current understanding of math from their experiences and also the world around them to develop their problem-solving skills. And this kind of also starts with what the students know, and then invites the students to come into the math learning and focus on student thinking, which is a really important concept within the instructional design, and also to be responsible for students that they develop their conceptual understanding and also develop their procedural understanding. We also wanted to share with you in terms of the timeline of events. But from the Board of Approval on January 22, this kind of kicked off a number of different things, and where we had initial virtual training on the platform at the beginning of February. We also received from McGraw-Hill in terms of the hard copy, and which went through a process of barcoding and et cetera, as we received the materials and also inventoried the materials. Then also we also received, went through a multiple month process, was the PDs that the illustrative math actually provided us. There's been some discussion, and this is some of the feedback we received from teachers, that some teachers felt some of these professional developments were lacking, and they wanted some more. I've heard some teachers that they thought they received a good amount from it. Some teachers on the other side, so it was a mixed bag. And also from in terms of the illustrative math, is when we went to the purchase in June 2022, and also going into the summer work. Now, I just want to provide a note on some of the summer work in terms of I think we had, based off of my memory, we had 4 high school teachers, 2 in Algebra 2, 1 in Geometry that worked, I believe, 2 days. And then we had a high school teacher that worked with the Algebra 1, I believe, 7 days. Similar to that, this kind of really helped try to kick off to help prepare in the beginning of, at at the end of August. But again, there are some challenges on getting access to teachers, especially with, as we all know, I believe there was a significant amount of teacher burnout, and then I don't believe we received the amount of teachers to work on the resources over the summer as needed.
Over the past few weeks, Drs. Tracy, Rasmussen, and myself, along with other stakeholders, have engaged in asking teachers and looking at what had occurred over the implementation cycle here. So we just wanted to do a few slides here on what we've learned from that inquiry. One of them, which was one of the initial concerns, is the difference between virtual and hard copy resources and the communication aspects in that sense of what the actual purchase was for the virtual resources, and in not intending to mislead and say that we were purchasing hardcover textbooks. And we do know from working with the teachers as well, or speaking with the teachers, I should say, as well, that at this point, there's uncertainty whether those hardcover resources will be beneficial to their teaching, which we have to probe a little bit further as well. As Dr. Rasmussen said in one of the third action steps on the former slide, the professional development that was given did not meet the standards that we were expecting, or even that the teachers were expecting within there, the virtual training, and that it was inadequate and it needs to essentially be redone in multiple formats. And again, that goes to the training of the next slide, to understand the practices and how they integrate with our curriculum, and to avoid burnout and to avoid having to over-supplement for a variety of reasons within this program, so that students are learning the key skills and content of each of those courses, their Algebra 1, 2, and Geometry, in order so that they can go on to the next level there. Right now, we don't feel that is appropriate. And then finally here on this slide, the sequencing of topics has come up as a concern among those teaching the courses, in a sense that there perhaps is too much content and skills loaded into this, and that kids need to fill gaps that may have been missing from previous courses for a variety of reasons, including the last 2 years, as well as topics that students come to us in these courses with that teachers feel need to be taught in some of the first and other units that may not be showing up adequately in the current units. We heard this next one loud and clear, which is that when we have a new way of teaching and learning that may rely on ways that were not previously implemented, the time to adjust is really important in a rollout plan, and being able to integrate that over time would be beneficial when it's appropriate and when it's necessary for that type of learning. I am not saying here as I sit here that students should only be involved in inquiry. We know the value of direct instruction. We know the value of teacher-led instruction. We know the value of lectures, for lack of a better word. And we know that that has to be integrated within our courses, and that students learn best when there is a variety of methods, including when the expert in front of that classroom, the teacher, is able to impart that knowledge to students and then have those practice skills moving forward. And then finally, we talked a little bit last time about the time and money being devoted to copying versus, as we said in the first bullet, the hardcover resources or textbooks, workbooks that we spoke about in the past meeting.
What we really want to focus on is moving forward, and we really want. So in our discussion with the teachers, we really want to kind of reincorporate some of the tried and true things that we've been done in the past, and really take to, because in the end, Algebra 1 is Algebra 1, Geometry is Geometry, and Algebra 2 is. So we need to kind of take a step back to kind of before we kind of to allow us to take a few steps forward. with the goal of also incorporating illustrative math and some of the things that we already know we do well. Because we do believe in in terms of the activities in the illustrative math, especially around the purpose around the vision of the graduate. Also, also moving forward, kind of ensuring they're making sure all the teachers have a hard copy workbook so they can have access to, and also determining whether and this is another step moving forward, whether we want to go and actually give every student a hard copy IM workbook for every student. Now, we do have a note down here that we do want to be very clear, based off of any and all, this is a standard process we do in here in Fairfield Public Schools. We have a process for when a book is, text is retired, we go through a process where this is a town protocol to actually, where we sell the resource. So what the suggestion from the teacher is, they say they have all the resources they need to actually implement the PACS topics. Again, we've been implementing Algebra 1 topics, linear functions, quadratic functions. That is standard in any Algebra 1 course. Similarity, congruence, and trigonometry, those are always all standard kind of resources within our Algebra 1 geometry, Algebra 2. The teachers believe that they can implement and go back to some of the resources that they have developed over time. But also is also moving forward is the remainder of this semester. We have a large professional development day coming up, and this is something where the teacher teams believe that they can actually kind of go back and re-envision the standards, topics, and skills that also including illustrative math that comprise each of the 3 courses to kind of make up. And again, we will ensure that all the students will come out of Algebra 1 having the central concepts and skills needed to be successful in the next course. And also going into the spring semester in terms of, and this has been a desire of the teachers, they want the continued professional development on the instructional strategies necessary to be in the principles and the research base around, in terms of the illustrative math. We've, through the work my math coaches, we've already identified some resources, some texts, some readings, in terms of also kind of doing some of the work in our professional learning communities, doing some kind of peer observations as we kind of learn and kind of will learn from each other throughout this process. Also going into spring of 23, again, kind of as they'll present there moving forward in terms of our continued work from the election day and also continued through the first semester in terms of some of the sequence and topic and skills. And also, but I think it goes on any good implementation guide actually kind of guides to what are those prerequisite skills that all the students need to be successful in the course. And also kind of timing the phasing of illustrative math resources. One of the suggestions would be to kind of phase it in through the various courses. But that will allow the teachers to kind of work through that before we come to any recommendations for that. And also kind of makes you be clear in terms of the time and how to plan within a block schedule using the illustrative math resources. A lot of the literature kind of talks about the activities having a lot more to a 45-minute period, but there's in terms of how do we kind of take the information from illustrative math that talks about the block schedule guidance, but also incorporate some of our tried and true type of instructional resources. And I think this goes to, is a larger issue. I think we can also kind of discuss how do we kind of help differentiate classes between honors and college prep. I think this is something that we can work on, and also to differentiate how do we kind of talk about in terms of honors being more in depth as courses go more in kind of understanding the topics as needed within each of those courses. I do want to emphasize here, to me, the emphasis between the rigor. I do believe that any and all courses should have rigor, and this is an important concept that we don't want to now hamstring a student in any way that then take out the thinking of it a course that really kind of does not get at the vision of the graduate. So we really want to stress the difference, making sure rigor is in all courses, not just in honors. And ultimately, we would like to come back and actually kind of, again, present our revised kind of a plan in terms of this implementation plan. That's one of the things I think that also we've learned along the way is this is not just a flip of the switch. I think we need to kind of what we learned along the way is we need to take a step back, take a more of a graduated approach, honor the learning of the teachers, honor the learning of the students as we get into the resource, and not just kind of jump in 2 feet first. So ultimately, as we kind of wrap this up here, is our ultimate goal is to fulfill the vision of the graduate, not just in other courses, but in all our secondary courses. We believe that the illustrative math can be an effective resource. When I say algebra, I mean we talk about both our algebra courses and also our geometry. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I guess right off the bat, one question I have is that, so we're in week 9 of school. Are we going to, are teachers and students in a really difficult position now because there have been 9 weeks of school and there are already concerns about things falling behind? So how are we going to be able to make sure that they catch up, that the teachers aren't overburdened, that the students aren't overburdened, that we'll be able to get where we need to get by the end of the year?
Yes, that's also our goal was, like we said, our ultimate goal is we want to make sure every student is ready for the next course. And this is going to be a heavy lift on the teachers, but this is something that they felt that we needed to do, and this is the important work that we have to do. So, and then this is not something that I think this is also sometimes a function even coming off of COVID, is finding out those gaps and working with those and helping the students move forward and ensure that they are prepared for every course. And that's our challenge, and we will work tirelessly to get that done.
Right, but it's an additional challenge because we're 9 weeks in,
Yes.
and we're changing course.
Yes, I mean, you can look where we talk about where the pacing, where the students are right now. I was in over at Tomlinson looking at, I was in their Algebra 1 course yesterday. I mean, they're about a third of the way through Unit 2, which is a fairly large unit in terms of using the linear functions, which then leads into systems of equations, which leads into the inequalities. If you look back to our past curriculum, that was actually 3 units. Based off of their pacing, they're looking around, based off they told me they're around Thanksgiving or around the December 1st timeline. So it's kind of judging where every class is and making sure that we can identify these concept skills that is vertically aligned to make sure all the students are prepared for the next course.
Right, but I thought part of the problem is that that the pacing was not working out well, that things weren't going as quickly as we'd like, and now you're saying that they're already up to Thanksgiving?
What I can say is it is dependent on by class. I mean, based off of going into the various classrooms, some teachers are a little farther ahead, some teachers are a little far behind, especially because they're trying to meet the needs of their students. But so now, how do we kind of make sure that every student, every class is coming to the same conclusion of we are going to ensure that every student is going to have the base concepts and skills and standards and that is necessary to be in the next course. Yes, and that is our challenge, and that is going to be our work. And yes, that's going to be the thing that we need to ensure, because the last thing we want to do is leave a student behind.
If
And that's
may I just, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you. I think your point is well taken. I would agree with you. We're 9 weeks in, and part of the graduated response in terms of the teachers building the curriculum moving forward with the implementation would be identifying those gaps and seeing what may have to go into a different course. We can't recapture the 9 weeks, which I think is your point here. And that has to be looked at in terms of what perhaps needs to come out and what might need to go somewhere else. And that's why we're looking at the graduated approach moving forward, so that we can build in those pieces so that all students do have those skills in due time. And it might not be in June, to your point about the 9 weeks, but it would happen as a result of the building with taking some things out and putting some things into other places.
Okay, yeah, I mean, I think obviously everyone.
So I sincerely hope that we are able to the best of our abilities, make sure that they are able to do that, but without overburdening the staff as well. I mean, there are two pieces here, and I think that both groups, definitely have been put in a really difficult position. So I'm sorry, just one more question. So professional development. So when you're talking about the professional development, is this like different professional development than was already being planned? Or was this something that you were going to be doing anyway? Like we're talking about Election Day that's coming up next week or the week after next.
We did have to adjust our professional development plan based off of the feedback from the teachers. This is based off of the feedback from the teachers would be our first work is the priorities to actually making sure alignment in terms of the concepts and skills. And also then the shift would go around in the second semester doing a lot of the professional development around those effective instructional strategies that are at the basis and philosophy of the resource. No, actually, it's not really to the resource. These are just effective instructional strategies.
We would be working. This would be a new plan to answer your question. Working from the ground up based on the feedback that we received over the past, I'd say, at least I've received over the past 2 weeks, to make sure that we are responding to the needs of the teachers in those who are actually teaching these courses in the middle and the high school. So this was not something that we were already planning on doing, essentially, especially on November 8th. It's in response to what we're hearing is feedback of what needs to happen to make this situation better.
Right, so then I guess my question is something else going to be left out now? Something that was being planned that might be valuable now won't be able to take place because now we're doing this professional development based on the issues that have arisen?
I would say the moving ahead with the PD that was planned would not be beneficial in that we need to go backwards, and simply moving ahead with stuff that was there would not. It wouldn't build upon what we want to do, because we essentially have to start over in terms of the understanding and the implementation guides and recreating the units in a sequence in a manner that is appropriate for the students and the teachers teaching the course.
Okay, and then I'm sorry, just one last question. So what, if any, are the budget implications for this in terms of both time and money?
I don't have a dollar amount for you right here at the table. If there is teacher time after school to build the implementation plans, that would be an added cost that we did not anticipate. But I don't have a solid number for you right now in terms of that planning.
Okay, thank you very much. And I just want to say I'm just incredibly frustrated by this entire situation. I'll just leave.
Mr. Peterson.
Thank you. And I'm also frustrated, just to Mrs. Gerber's point. I guess first I want to thank Dr. Tracy and especially Carol Guernsey and Chrissy Kelly here for being on top of this issue. I feel like this is one of those things that needed a little detective work to make it to the board table, which always frustrates me too. Had we not kind of had a tip from some parents, we might be later on this than had we otherwise been. I went back and I looked at the December 14th, 2021 presentation that you made to the board involving this textbook, the illustrated, the IM textbook. You referred to it at the time as an instructional resource. We're talking about how what we're trying to do is have better content alignment between Algebra 1, Algebra 2, and geometry. But what seems to be happening here, and this is a revelation to me over the past couple of weeks, you're talking, especially in this presentation, about a new way of learning, new methods. None of that, I think, was clear to us. Well, certainly it wasn't clear to me when you came before the board to present this material. Can you explain that discrepancy?
A lot of that really kind of comes into the alignment of when we looked at the math practice standards, which was displayed if you actually remember the image in terms of the ed reports. I kind of talked about the coherence, but also the mathematical practices and rigor. So really kind of looked at that's one of kind of really the key aspect of the resource. It kind of really supported the pedagogy that really kind of really facilitated effective learning.
Why wasn't it clear that there was a significant change in the pedagogy when you made the presentation?
I mean, when we really focus on as a curriculum presentation, really focus on the curriculum itself. And in terms of the pedagogy itself, that's something that we kind of work through the professionals to understand what are the most effective teaching and learning processes that maximize the learning. So really, what I'm just being direct here is when I'm putting together a curriculum presentation, it's around specifically the curriculum and the alignment of the resource to the standards and also the math practice standards. That was really what the purpose of that presentation.
But it seems clear from what we've heard the past couple of weeks that this new way of learning, as you call it, is part and parcel with IM. Is that correct?
So, for example, you're saying that it's one and the same. Yeah, is that what?
I'm asking you.
Yes, I mean, ultimately that's what we really believe, and when we talk about the effective instructional resources that maximize learning, we really talk about. I mean, in terms of we talk about the literature, we talk about the students engaging in reflective tasks, the students actually going through the process of understanding and developing those conceptual understandings, where the student actually is the active participant in the lesson. And go ahead.
If I could just jump in for a minute on this. I think the learning that we have done at this point goes directly to your statement. I think we could be more clear in our presentations of how a curriculum unfolds and implements. We're going to see language arts coming soon, and not to compare the two, but we have to be better at communicating to the public, not just to this board, of how that looks in implementation. And I don't think we may have done a good job on last December, perhaps, on doing that. And I know, at least in my learning from this experience, is that curriculum and instruction go hand in hand, and we have to be very clear when we present a curriculum what that means in an actual classroom as well.
I appreciate that, and I can only speak for myself. No, you were not clear in that presentation. And I went back and I watched just to make sure that I wasn't the one who was mistaken. Dr. Rasmussen, can you compare and contrast the IM approach to the rollout of college preparatory mathematics a decade ago?
Well, like that really kind of was I'm kind of rehashing going off to that. That was in terms of professional development, in terms of the rollout of the resource. Can you be a little more specific in terms of just a general rollout? It was in terms of that.
How about in terms of the type of instruction that IM guides us toward versus the CPM?
In terms of the CPM, in terms of also the illustrative math, they do support a similar instructional pedagogical approach. And that's something that...
And was the CPM rollout successful in your opinion?
So if I talk about the rollout, I mean, was there issues with the CPM? Of course there was, but if we look in terms of the professional development that the teachers actually provided, I still hear to this day that the professional development was that was the best professional.
What about student experience?
Well, actually, student experience. The funny thing, I was just looking at that. I was going. So when I looked at the data as they progress through, that's something that has always been on my mind in terms of, and that's something that we studied very heavily. So when I looked at the results of the students, say, for example, the students that actually were in 8th grade, they went over, and now they were the first group of students that went into the SAT a couple years later. When I compared even to the next years later after that, when we went back to a Pearson product, there was no significant difference in terms of the overall student performance.
Since you brought up that 8th grade, my daughter was in that 8th grade. My daughter is brilliant, loved science and math, started coming home from those 8th grade classes crying and telling me that she wasn't good at math. That this course, that this manifestation of her math education in middle school made her believe that she was not capable of doing math at a high level. The group work, the math by doing math, and students teaching other students was very stressful for her. And I will tell you, it was like a switch flipped off in her mind. And through high school, she repeatedly said, I'm just not that good. It's not my thing. I will tell you, she went to college. She rediscovered her love of math and sciences. She graduated early from Dickinson College with a degree in chemistry, immediately got a job in R&D, and is now headed to Washington, D.C. to work with the National Policy Institute. She was failed by this curriculum. Failed. And she had to go to college to rediscover that, yes, she could do it. Yes, she had the intelligence to do it. So I will tell you, as I see these things about a new way of learning and things that seem very similar to our experience a decade ago, I have to tell you, it sends chills up my spine. And again, going back to the presentation on December 14th, 2021, and feeling, frankly, like I was misled about what we were getting into. I feel there's been a breach of trust here. And I say that very seriously and very sadly. I'll step away now and let other people have their questions, but this has been quite a blow to me.
Any other questions? Ms. Kelly.
So I just want to be clear on, I share all of, aside from the personal stories, I share all of Jeff's frustrations with this process. I just wanted to make sure I have it clear. We're talking about that we're 9 weeks in, going forward, whatever. What's happening in math tomorrow? Are we IMing tomorrow? Are we not IMing tomorrow? Like what's happening tomorrow in math?
So from here, there'll be a communication plan working out to the schools, kind of going to tell them the course of action that we'll be doing moving forward, kind of outlining the plan, and also kind of going in terms of the steps that we'll be taking, and kind of going back to being able for the teachers to use the resource at their discretion. And also going from here is working with my math coaches. We have a meeting on Friday, kind of determining and also kind of outlining the steps and the specific actions within our professional development as we kind of help move forward.
Okay.
Ms. Kelly. Go ahead, Dr. Tracy.
If I might, our new superintendent needs a little time to get here and to embrace or alter what we've presented tonight. As I said before, I'm not asking for any vote tonight, and I do want to respect the fact that he needs to get here and determine whether what we've suggested tonight is his plan or something else. So I think we can, and I hope the team can get to a better place in short order, but I can't tell you it's going to happen tomorrow morning.
I respect that. I do respect that, but time is of the essence. And I don't think I'm over-exaggerating when I say every day counts. Every day counts. So while I'm sensitive to the new superintendent coming in, I'm sensitive to him having his input, we have teachers who are begging for help, and we have students who are not getting what they need. And to wait any longer when it is already October 24th, 5th, is unconscionable to me. So I appreciate the sentiment of waiting, but we don't have that luxury, in my opinion. So when I ask what's happening in the classrooms tomorrow, I mean what's happening in the classrooms tomorrow. No disrespect to what you just said, but
I have shared what you have seen tonight with Mr. Testani, and you may have seen his response. I'm not sure how widely he shared it, but I can certainly resume conversation with him tomorrow morning. I can do that, but I want to respect the fact that I'm a short timer here, and it really wouldn't be proper for me to start telling people what to do tomorrow without working in close tandem with him. So I can call him up tomorrow and tell him that let's see if we can do something before the week is out. But I can't One thing I don't want to do is make promises that I won't be here to keep.
And just for the board, Mr. Testani did request the opportunity just to catch up on this, to begin, to see where we are. But I share, Ms. Kelly's question that I would hate to think that there is in any way a holding pattern in our classrooms right now, because our teachers, I think, know what they need to do to move our kids forward. And I would hope that while we're figuring out how best to provide professional development and training and use these resources, that the message is very loud and clear that we need to be moving students forward. And when I'm hearing tonight that there are some differences in different classrooms, that some may be doing just fine, some might be further ahead, I would ask that you have an assessment of where everybody is, and put, even if it's short-term measures, to kind of fill those gaps while Mr. Testani gets on board and catches up. And I'm sorry for taking the board's time. Back just to follow up on really Mrs. Gerber's initial questioning and Ms. Kelly's what's happening tomorrow, because waiting, while I appreciate the process, I think that we need to kind of give our teachers the freedom to move forward with what they know our kids need, using the resources at their disposal. Back to the board for questions and comments. Mrs. Maxon-Kennelly.
One of the few times I actually would almost kill for a 5-minute recess so that I could organize my comments, because they are extensive. I had tried to communicate much of this ahead of time to staff, so most of what I'm saying should not be taking any of them by surprise. I couldn't send them to the board because that would be improper. So I want to start with the goal. And according to this presentation, the goal is, 1, to fulfill the vision of the graduate within our secondary mathematical courses. I'm fully on board with that goal. In no way am I on board with goal number 2, incorporation of illustrative math resources into our algebra and geometry courses. I am not on board with that. I'm not saying I'm opposed to it. However, I want to start with one question. Again, this is where I apologize that I can't be more organized, but maybe through the chair to Dr. Tracy. Can you tell me when the website was updated with the Algebra 1 curriculum document that I'm looking at right now?
No, I cannot. I'm not sure.
Because I do not believe this is the document that was here 1 week ago.
I can't respond to that. Maybe Dr. Rasmussen, do you know what Ms. Maxon-Kennelly is referring to?
I do not actually know what she's referring to, because actually the document that it's been up there for weeks. I know I had a teacher reach out to me first week of school and to ensure that all the correct documents were there.
Okay, well, what I can say for sure is that this is not the document the board voted on. I can say that fairly definitively. First of all, and I know that because embedded in this curriculum document, straight up, is the resource illustrative math. When we were presented this curriculum in December, that name was never mentioned to us. And I take that further because our presentation in December was solely focused on new math courses, which was actually a very vigorous, I enjoyed the presentation. I loved the thought that you had led and that staff had put into the creation of those new courses so that our students could meaningfully take math for 4 years. But the notion that we were moving statistics from Algebra 2 to Algebra 1, as a very, very simple example, was absolutely never shared with this board. The fact that we were making a very seismic shift was never shared with this board, and I have never seen this document. So that's my starting point. And again, I apologize for what's going to be a little bit disorganized, but I think the fact that there is a goal in spring of 2023 to present revised curricula to the Board of Ed for approval is a testament to the fact that the curriculum we approved last December was not transparent. The changes were never communicated to us.
essentially, I thought it was status quo with algebra, geometry, and algebra 2, the 3 most important high school courses we offer in terms of how we are measured by the state, via the SAT, for example. And that such a significant change was being made, and the fact that staffer is acknowledging that they need to present a revised curricula for our approval is putting me in the position that while I completely echo what Mrs. Gerber and Mr. Peterson and Ms. Kelly shared as concerns, I think the position that we are in right now is far, far more dire than what I think everyone may realize. I do not believe that our staff is actually delivering the curriculum that we, with full knowledge and insight, approved. And that's wrong. And I want to be clear. I'm not saying that ultimately that the curriculum, I want to say real curriculum, and there are 2 of them. There's the illustrative math curriculum, and then there's what we thought we were approving. And I am not saying, I am ignorant of illustrative math. I am not about to make the argument that it is poor practice. But I do know that we have not had a presentation. Illustrative math is a curriculum. It is not a resource. It was presented to us as a resource. It is a fully fleshed out curriculum used in Arizona. We have had no data on whether it is successful or not, or what it has achieved for districts that have implemented it. The instructional methodology, I echo Mr. Peterson's concern. One of the first things I dealt with when Mrs. Gerber and I joined the board was what had happened in our middle schools with this different instructional method. And so to say where our staff is now and what our path is forward, I want to be really clear that I do not consider our biggest issue right now to be COVID gaps. I don't want blame falling on COVID, which would have been a difficult enough situation on its own. But we've now rolled out a curriculum that our staff was not prepared for, that our students were not prepared for, that they were jumping into material that the gaps were created by the curriculum change, not by COVID, is a dire situation for what are the foundational courses of certainly higher math and certainly for that SAT. And I do not have a path forward to suggest in terms of how do we assess where we are, where we're going, what is the best way to get there. But I do know that in no way do I want to say as a board member that I endorse goal number 2 of illustrative math. And I'll now take a step back further to the selection of illustrative math. I don't know, Dr. Rasmussen, if you can speak to exactly how that was selected, because I have heard some things that I find highly problematic in terms of how it was selected, because it is always our board understanding that it has the full vetting of our math staff, that they have the chance to, all of them, to work through I mean, we kind of take, when a staff member comes up, I can't think of when we last, I don't think we ever have rejected a textbook or resource suggestion of staff. We trust that they have time to go through it, that they have voted on it and selected it as a staff body. And I was wondering if you could start with, because again, if that's the goal, I think we have to start there of how illustrative math was selected, what the exact process was, and our staff input in that process.
I can speak specifically to a number of things that you brought up. One, I do not know in terms of when you said that the curriculum was not given to you. I can actually provide you the document that I provided that had the links that I send out not only to this board but also the public. Number 2, the process that we use in terms of selecting a resource is a process that has been standard that I use not only this time but also 10 years ago. The process that we use in terms of looking at the Pearson the resource, and the same thing in terms of the EdGEMs and also the pre-calc. It was exactly the same process in terms of it was initial review. All teachers were looking at the various resources to boil it down to, I believe, initial was 4. So once we got it down to 4, we called the various vendors, and they did resource presentations to us. We did them in this room, okay? The initial kind of going into looking at the various resources, the 4 that we looked at, some of the teachers were uncomfortable kind of moving forward with in one of the 4. They asked me, can you go out, can I actually find these other 2 that were also in high consideration, which were both McGraw-Hill products. From there, we actually did a resource presentation to the same committee, and actually did the same resource kind of evaluations to keep the same kind of variables in terms of the things that we're looking for in terms of those resources. It was the same process we used for the middle school, the same process we used for the pre-calc. It's also exactly the same process that we used 10 years ago with the big ideas and also going into the other. So this was not something new. So in the case was, so we did those evaluations, the teachers did the evaluations, we gather that information back, we make the best informed decision, be able to looking at those resources. All the resources were in the schools for the teachers to view. In terms of having every teacher vote, this is not something that we've ever done in terms of every teacher voting on a resource. Ultimately, the committee ends up being a steering committee for the administration to make the informed decision. So that's based off of the information received back from the steering committee. It was actually rated the highest rated resource, and I can provide you with that data in terms of how that resource was evaluated by the mix of middle school teachers and also high school teachers that were also on that committee. Based off my memory, I think we had 12 in terms of 12 teachers that were looking at the Algebra 1 geometry, Algebra 2 sequence, and also providing it. So ultimately, one of our goals was to provide continuity between the resource between all 3 courses. So it was a lengthy process, and it takes a lot of time, not only for not the high school ones, but also the middle school. And it was, this was something that I've ever deviated off of. So it was not to say that if this was not my choice, but ultimately this was the choice that really came out of that steering committee. So, and I concurred. I agreed that this was the highest rated resource coming out. Did I actually rate them? I actually tried, and I even told the teachers, I do not want any of my bias coming out in terms of the resource coming out. I said that, I believe I was standing right there. And then we had a horseshoe in terms of doing a presentation up there. So it was a fair and a fair process. I think one of the things now in hindsight we're going to, I believe we got a little over our head in terms of our implementation plan, and that's what we're trying to remedy to help us move forward. The teachers, in terms of our conversation, still value it as an effective resource in terms of providing those activities that are student and very engaging in the classroom. I'm a little frustrated when I hear that things were not taken into consideration when I used exactly the same process throughout all the processes I've ever used in the 13 years I've been here as an administrator. So it's something that I do take a lot of consideration to help make the decision, because this is an important decision. And when we invest in resources, we have to take the time to do all the resources we can. Even from there, when we actually start talking about looking at calling other districts, it's like doing an interview. I'm calling based off of my recollection. I believe I spoke to, I think, 3 districts that were using this resource. And also in mind, there's other resource towns that also use it. So, for example, I believe I talked to Berlin, Killingly, and also Cambridge, Massachusetts. They're also kind of using the same road. So it's a lengthy process, but it's a long process because we ultimately want to make the right use of the resources to provide our teachers with the resources needed to get to, as our goal was, to provide a resource for the vision of the graduate. So, but I think we need to take a step back. We can continue to move forward, but to say that resources weren't provided or the process was not sound, I cannot say that. I'm sorry.
Can I ask a quick follow-up to that? Just because I do believe it speaks to maybe part of the process. Can you clarify for me if the IM digital resource is in fact free?
Well, IM itself is an open source resource. The question that I've received about this is actually, is the platform needed to provide the teachers with the resources needed to actually do it in working class? If you can go to Illustrative Math, you can provide, it actually says IM certified partners. we're working with one of the IAM certified partners, which would be McGraw-Hill, which says, for example, provides the teachers with a presentation tool, provides the teachers with the actual digital platform to actually kind of facilitate the various lessons and activities going through there, and also goes through and also in terms of the assessments that kind of work through this. So it's not just as new and says, okay, well, we can use the free resource. We want to provide our teachers with all the tools necessary to implement the resource, not just the free resources that you can find online. Because can you find all the student lessons? Absolutely. But going into and start teaching through the resource takes a little more in terms of to actually facilitate this in class. For example, when I was just in a classroom the other day in Algebra 1, in terms of the teacher had kind of in terms of the interactivity that was built into the McGraw-Hill site to actually kind of make that activity kind of come to life. So it's not just a standalone piece of paper in terms of it goes a lot more in deeper in terms of the resources that teachers can use in class to help engage students.
So to be clear, in the initial round, with narrowing it down to 4, staff picked a resource which was not McGraw-Hill IM. And then another one came in and a different, smaller group involving middle school
we
made
did
that
it all.
selection.
So when we did the initial selection, we were going through the process. The initial selections to always kind of narrow it down. Was McGraw-Hill close on the initial kind of evaluation? I mean, it was in the ballpark, but the term teachers, they chose the initial 4. But now when we did the further in-depth evaluation in this room with the vendor, going through more in detail, going through all the various tools that the teachers provide, so it was a lot more in depth. So it is a second round of evaluations that we went through. So now when the teachers are going through, there was really no clear cut. So then the teachers asked me, like, hey, can we bring in that other set that was also very close, which was the reveal and also through McGraw-Hill and also the illustrative math. And based off of those continued presentations, the teachers actually felt that the platform was a better platform than the other ones that they were provided in terms of not only the usability, but also in terms of the assessment platform.
Is it fair to say that the teachers who were having this exposure to McGraw-Hill probably have absolutely no idea what they were actually really signing on for, given the subsequent problems we have had since day 1 of school? That, for example, a statistics unit that's supposed to take 4 weeks, and that they're still in 9 weeks in. So that there's, I'm going to leave that because I have other points I want to bring up, but there seems to be something highly flawed about the degree to how informed our staff was. And I do not believe this idea that the incorporation of illustrative math resources, which I want to be clear, I want to stop talking about this as illustrative math resources. We bought a prepackaged curriculum, and the board was not aware that that is what we were doing. And it was a prepackaged curriculum that came with prepackaged lessons, that came with prepackaged instructional methodology, which has proven difficult in the past with a poor rollout. And so none of this was shared with us. And that is why, to me, this idea that in the spring of 2023, we're going to be voting on a curricula after we are we are empowering our staff to do PD, instructing them on how to use a resource that I'm not even sold we should be using. That is back to my point of 15 minutes ago, and I have other points to make, this is Mrs. Vitale, but back to my initial point that I don't know that what we should be doing right now, we really need to put some very careful thought into that November 8th PD, because goodness knows we know that they need this Algebra 1 foundation. I don't even know what to say about geometry and Algebra 2, but in no size, shape, or form am I sold that illustrative math is the resource that our staff wants, can effectively use, or best serves our students. So I really have to call into question that goal. I'm going to try to move more quickly through my other points.
That's fine. I just want to, I did go back and look at some of the backup that we received when we were reviewing the curriculum. The illustrative math was part of that backup, and it was shared with the public, I think, in December. And the hard copy of the books were in this room in January prior to the board's vote. And I will, just to put it out there
No,
in terms
I have no problem admitting when I've made a mistake.
And I will send that to you. But go
But
ahead.
I want to be clear. We've seen the illustrative math textbook. If this were a textbook vote, this would be a very different discussion. It was not. In no way were we informed of what it is that we were buying into or the fact that anything was being changed. Please tell me where in the presentation that we had the specifics of the change, because this board is very, very careful to start asking about, well, how do we support the fact that a student who's now reaching Algebra 2 will not have had this IM support in Algebra 1? Those are all questions we would have asked. We asked none of that because we were never told that there were curriculum changes in these courses.
Mrs. Mexicali, my comment about when the math resource was changed was not really, I was not arguing with you. I was just putting it out there.
But again,
just
I do want to say,
for the public and just to kind of.
I acknowledge that, so that is my mistake.
With your line of questioning.
So, but, okay, so again, this reiteration of we believe in IM, I fundamentally call into question, and that came out numerous times in this presentation. I'm not going to believe that we believe in IM until I hear of a survey of our staff. It's that simple. Not leadership, not department chairs, not building principals. When I hear from our staff that they see this as being the best tool and the best curricula to roll out for our students, I would not be interested in supporting 1 penny of investment in this. Nothing. Until I hear from our staff on this. Because what I have heard in the past few weeks is just, I mean, we knew, again, the only COVID aspect of this is that we already knew that there was some learning loss, and we had those gaps. These gaps we created, we as a district, and that's just wrong. Let me see if my other points, sorry. Again, it's just the repetition within here of the value of the believing in, and I have lots of comments that I don't need to read aloud. I guess I will. Yeah, no, I think I can.
Ms. Kelly, go ahead.
Just to put the exclamation point on the, it was a resource, not a curriculum. I didn't vote in support of the textbooks. Okay, that was because I thought that's all they was textbooks. I thought, to your point before, Dr. Rasmussen, where you said Algebra 1 is Algebra 1, geometry is geometry. And I'm thinking, we're asking for $10 million. We could probably not spend $500,000 this year because algebra is algebra. And if that's all we were changing was the resource at that point, and it was just the textbook, that didn't seem like a necessary spend to me. If I thought it was more curriculum involved, to Ms. Maxon-Canelli's point, there definitely would have been more dialogue about that. But for me, it was transactional. We were buying textbooks. We were buying a resource. And that's what I was basing my vote on.
Go ahead, Ms. Maxon-Canelli.
My last comment. I should have started with something positive, so I'll do that. And then my last comment, which is, I do want to say to Dr. Tracy, to Dr. Rasmussen, and to Dr. Zavjanzik, I do enormously appreciate the time that you spent listening to our staff and the degree to which I believe you have incorporated their feedback into this. And that's not, it's very easy to not do that. And I speak from personal experience on that. So I very sincerely thank you for the time that you put into that and hearing them out. And I look forward to that continuing. But the last thing I'd like to say is that this whole notion of the vision of the graduate, which of course we believe in, we've voted on this document, and it's incorporated in all of our curriculum discussions. I have never heard anything to say from my children's experience in math that these bullet points of the vision of the graduate weren't fulfilled with the previous curriculum. So I don't want this to be the reason why we are moving to IM, because it does this and what we did before didn't. So I just have that as a final point. But again, I am very concerned and really want to hear more about the November 8th PD and how we are going to move these children forward.
Thank you. Ms. Guernsey.
So I already sent a series of questions, so I just have a few things today, because I really echo all the statements at this table so far today. I also wanted to really just commend our teachers because it's seemingly against all odds. They are doing the great work of teaching math to our students, and I'm really grateful for their patience through this process. Because as frustrating as it is for me to sit at this table, they're in our classrooms every day. And to that point, just a couple notes I made today. Dr. Rasmussen, you mentioned that, and I'm thinking about, again, what are these students and teachers going to do tomorrow? That's critical. So when you made the statement that I think something about the resources that the teachers have developed over time would be what they're using, I don't really understand that. And I mean, we have new teachers to the district. What resources would they be using? The books aren't here. I can't even conceptualize how that's rolling out. Yes, the teachers know best how our children can learn on a daily basis, but I mean, there has to be some guidance here too.
Based on our conversations with the teachers when we were talking about moving forward in preparation for this presentation, they specifically talked about, I mean, some of the best things that we can do is sharing the good ideas that have already been created. I mean, every teacher that we have here is being supported by a mentor and also a colleague that is also teaching the same course. So no one is going to be left behind. And that's to me the beautiful aspect of teaching it is when best done, it's best done in a collaborative approach. So we will ensure every teacher has the resources needed to actually move forward. And I think any teacher that is also in the buildings will ensure that no teacher will also be left behind. And will be some of my task moving forward is making sure all the teachers have the necessary materials and a structure where they can collaborate and also share.
So I appreciate that response, but I hope that you can understand my hesitation in accepting that answer, because also these same teachers had been complaining about not having the resources that they needed since week one. And that first week of school was the week that I brought up my concerns, and now 9 weeks later, we're finally sort of, but not really addressing it. So that's really all I have to say. Like I said, I've already emailed my specific questions, but just extremely concerned about these students. I mean, these are thousands of students in our schools that are missing, one of the arguably most important subjects that they'll be taught in our school system. Just really discouraged by what I would consider an epic failure.
Questions? Any other comments? Ms. Jacobson.
I also submitted a bunch of questions yesterday as well. What do you know, just through the chair, will we be getting like a Q&A from whatever anyone else may have submitted? Because I think it's always helpful that we learn from each other's questions as well. So will a document be put together on all of the questions that all of us has submitted?
To the extent that they've come to me, I could certainly do that. If
Yes, through you, like what you asked, you
so
asked for
any inquiries and I've heard from several of you. If you'd like, I can put together a compilation of that, send it around to everybody, and also to our my administrative colleagues, so everybody has the chance to see what everybody has said. Happy to do that.
Okay. I'm not going to spend time echoing a lot of the things that other people have already said, but it is incredibly frustrating. I am more focused on, at this point, the move forward in terms of course, we need to figure out what happened here so we don't repeat this mistake. However, the go forward is, and I do respect that we have a new superintendent come on, but I am on the plan of don't have time to wait for him at this point. I'm sorry. And what concerns me in this presentation a little bit is that we seem to be reverting back to what we were doing before, but still providing the space to put in some of the discretionary components of this plan, when really we're 9 weeks in and we don't really know where everyone is. And should we not be just squarely focused on making sure that these 3 courses and all of the students are enrolled without blending in something else at this point, and allowing our teachers to have the time that they need to catch up or do whatever they need to do to focus on end of year course at this point in time?
I would agree. The IM resource that in the presentation, in my mind, that would be the additional is the activities that teachers feel are beneficial to the units that would be created, not another layer on top of the going back.
So in support of the reverting back.
Yeah, like they may have found something within there, in statistics, for example, and I know that wasn't a unit before, but since that's been brought up, that did work well, and maybe that is something they want to incorporate, but not the wholesale approach.
All right, so I'm on the board of the plan of needing more information before we spend any more time and money on this. I think that several things have been, just kind of wrap it up in terms of what I've heard tonight, is looking for a survey of staff in terms of where they are at, a survey from each classroom to know where they are in each of these courses. I'm particularly submitted questions on differentiation in terms of how we're meeting the variances between the levels of these classes this year going forward. And I know you mentioned Berlin and Killingly, and I'm going to want to know if there's any other districts in this state who are using these resources, and if they, how that's going in those districts in terms of outcomes for their students. Sorry, Jen.
And thank you for saying that. That was another point. Isn't it true also that Norwalk is using illustrative math right now and struggling? Wallingford, I believe, also, but they had a very different rollout.
And on any other district in terms of their rollout plan, because I don't have that information directly at my fingertips. So, I mean, I don't want to do anything hearsay in terms of...
No, but when you referenced the other districts before, Fairfield did spend time in Norwalk, which is struggling with illustrative math right now.
I think that is, like any time you go with the new resources, there's something that there's a learning curve, and based off of my conversation prior with Norwalk, and continue to grow, and their superintendent fully supports that resource. So that's something that we'll kind of look at and kind of continue to understand how to right now use the resource in an appropriate way within our district. I don't want to make any comments specifically to their struggles. I mean, we got some feedback in terms of the effectiveness, in terms of what they were doing, but also we were looking to also in terms of that first year rollout going into it, and also kind of learn from them. So it was meant to be the visits. We were kind of learning from this, so that we can actually kind of grow from the things that they were telling us. So, but again, I don't want to say all the specifics because of that's something that I don't have every detail of what they're struggling with or what they're not. So,
can I follow up to
Yeah.
Commenting about the survey of staff? I'm also in favor of that, and I might suggest the degree to which we can make that anonymous might be helpful in this case.
Thank you. My last question tonight is going to be on this, because I fear that we're slipping into somewhat of a pilot, non-pilot, didn't go through the process of a pilot, and won't have a control measure to evaluate effectiveness because we didn't go through the pilot, and that everybody's kind of in a pilot right now. Like, when we're reverting back because of this situation, but if we hadn't brought to our attention, it's like the whole district was in a pilot in terms of a whole new approach, not controlled for effectiveness. So I'm just wondering, did you at any point think about a pilot process so we would be able to do this on a very small scale? And I know parents, before you freak out, I know they don't necessarily want to be the one who's in the pilot class, but I'm just saying, was that a thought process, and if so, was it rejected? So I just think it's an important question to ask in terms of how we're approaching this work.
I can say specifically based off of the response, how, say, 10 years ago with CPM and the thoughts around piloting, it was not something that we considered because we wanted to go get approval first before actually kind of using the resource.
Okay. I'll finish up to the chair. I know that's going late. So I think we have a summary of the things that we're expecting to get from Q&As into these surveys and some data and some other districts. But I'm just going to say this to you, James, that I hope that starting tomorrow, every kid in this district is put back on track for this year. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for the presentation, for your continued work on this. For districts, I also reached out just to other board chairs to see if anybody was using this and their experiences. Off the top of my head, I think maybe Madison is using a combination of, their traditional curriculum and using illustrative math to complement it. I will double check that if you're just looking to get some more information. Absolutely, Dr. Tracy, always.
Thanks. Well, first of all, thank you, Dr. Rasmussen and Dr. Zavajancic, for joining me and trying to pull these ideas together. Three things that I'm taking away as my homework. One, to provide all board members with a compilation of all board member comments on this topic as they've been directed to me. Two, to confer with Mr. Testani to see whether he is in sync with this idea or something similar or something different, and do that tomorrow so that even before he's officially here, if there's a sense between the two of us that that this or something else should be done sooner than Tuesday, I appreciate the sense of urgency. But as I said before, I don't want to get ahead of my successor or make promises that I won't be around to keep. But I appreciate that you'd rather see us move tomorrow rather than a week from tomorrow. Third, on the issue of a survey, not now, but I'd like to get the advice of maybe a few board members. Maybe the chair could name a few people that would be willing to consult with my colleagues and I, because the essence of the survey is the specific questions. And if we're going to engage in an exercise like that, I want to make sure it's responsive to what you're all looking for. So maybe you, Ms. Vitale, could give me some guidance as to who I might reach out to,
Well,
and then we will
I'm going to start with
proceed.
Ms. Guernsey to start, being that she first brought this topic to the board, and she is our curriculum liaison. So I think that would be a good starting point, but I will discuss with her and get back to you with other suggestions. I hope you don't mind me just volunteering in there.
Ms. Vitale, may I just make a comment?
Yes.
Apparently, for anyone that can hear, the FairTV feed is out, and they're getting sound in and out. But I just confirmed with FairTV that this is being recorded and everything is being captured. So for anybody in the public that's hearing this and not being able to see, they will be able to go back and see it in the recorded version.
Thank you, Mr. Asa. Jerry jinxed us, saying we were all set when we were walking in. All right. Moving on to committee liaison reports. Mr. Telly?
So you have about an hour and 35 minutes to order your pies for SEPTA. It closes at midnight. Just want to let everybody know you can get your pies for Thanksgiving, and if you don't need any, you can buy a donation pie. It'll go straight to Operation Hope. So that closes at midnight, so go order your pies as soon as we're done with the meeting. We have our next SEPTA meeting tomorrow night at McKinley Cafeteria at 7:30. Melissa Bildner will be speaking on skills for success, what every parent needs to know about learning and mindset. And also, I just want to give everybody a little positive news. I did attend a conference this weekend. It's called SEEK, Special Education Equity for Kids of Connecticut. Was very informative. It was a great conference. Lots of leaders from the state, experts in all of their fields, at times really depressing news. And in one in particular described the school refusal and chronic absentee rates as ridiculously out of control, to which everybody at the state level, from Fran Rubinowitz to the director of SPED for the state, to all of the attorneys, parent or Board of Education, all agreed. And there was a lot of talk about disengagement and reaching out to kids. And then I came home and went to SEPTA's trunk or treat on Sunday at North Stratfield. Was tremendously successful. We had a great turnout. And I just want to say kudos to Fairfield's special ed team, Rob Mancusi, and the directors of SPED, who sponsored a table because it was indoors and not outside in the car trunks, who all took their time on a Sunday to decorate, to dress up, to engage with their students, and it was so heartwarming and so fun, and everybody just loved it. So at a time where we were hearing I was hearing so much the day before about the disengagement, to see it means so much to me as a parent, but also as a Board of Education member, to see our staff going out of their way on a Sunday to be there for our children. I thought you should all know it was really, really wonderful. So congrats.
What did Mr. Mancusi dress up as?
It was baseball themed. It was baseball themed.
Thank you, Mr. Otelli. Ms. Guernsey.
Thank you. So this is my first report on the curriculum committee. We'll be meeting for the first time on November 2nd, while some of you are in Hartford. And I'm really looking forward to this. I think it's extremely timely. And the goals of this committee, just to reiterate, are to provide direction, elicit feedback, and garner input from multiple stakeholders on our curriculum processes and procedures. So this is critical work. I'm going to be looking for your input so that I can work as a liaison and do our best work there to improve these processes. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Guernsey. Anything? No?
I went to the PTA council meeting that was right after our last Board of Ed meeting, and the next PTA council meeting is going to be in the morning of our next Board of Ed meeting. And at some point, I believe there's going to be a special meeting, PTA council regarding redistricting. Originally, it was going to be last week, and it had to be postponed. So I'll keep everyone posted on that. And nothing new to report with Mill Hill. We're just kind of in a holding pattern. They're going to hold back that money for the landscaping, and we'll revisit that in the spring.
Thank you. Mr. Asa.
So the Facilities Committee had a productive meeting last week. And as I had mentioned, we looked at the 2010 Facilities Guiding Principles. We went through and made suggested edits for a document that will be brought before the board at a special meeting. When we start discussing this, I will have a redlined version posted with the minutes and available to the board in the very near future. I would have to defer to the chair.
I'm going to be reaching out to the board.
I mean, like 2022 or 2023?
Oh, the special meeting about the planning principles, like within the next month. Yes, that will be as part of our, our racial imbalance plan, has engaged in the community and part of the facilities utilization work. That will be an important format. Have to discuss a little bit whether or not we want to have Q&A with the public, is a little bit more of an interactive dialogue. But to start, the board just reviewing, the initial stab that the facilities committee took on the principles. Appreciate that everybody at this table may have some ideas and want to give feedback. We just wanted to do a little bit of the legwork. Spent about 2 hours on it, and I think that we made some good progress, but looking forward to continuing the conversation with all of you in our community.
And there was one more update that we got at the Facilities Committee on the Ludlow scoreboard. So Mr. Papa George gave us an update on that, and that process is moving along.
Can you elaborate on that a little bit more, please?
Could we ask Mr. Papa George to come forward, please? That was a layup.
I know the RFPs were due a while ago, so.
You are correct. The RFPs were due. We had 3 bidders for the RFPs. We met with all 3 prospective companies. All three were given homework assignments and sent back to the drawing board, so we are waiting for their submittals for our updates.
Homework assignments beyond what was included in the RFP?
More detail as to what they submitted in the RFP. Specifically, a couple of the specific things are timelines, going back to their vendors to figure out exactly what type of timeline they can meet. In addition to that, also the upfront cost sharing with the possible ad sales and what the long-term funding could be with ad sales.
In terms of revenue?
In revenue, correct.
Gotcha. And when are those due?
We were giving them to the end of this week, and if we had not heard, we were going to reach back out to them.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Mrs. Mazzucchelli?
Thank you. From Parks and Rec, two things. And the first, it sounds like a wonderful event on the Sherman Green that is coming up during Fairfield Restaurant Week. And unfortunately, I've discovered that in all my notes, the one thing I didn't write down was the date. And so I did text Mr. Calabrese to see if he could get that to me. So hopefully he'll respond at 10:30 at night. But look for the announcement of it, because it's going to be from 6 to 7 on the Sherman Green. And what sounds like a lot of fun is that the Fairfield University is one of the sponsors of Fairfield Restaurant Week this year. And so they've organized an event on the Sherman Green. It's going to have photo opportunities for kids with the Fairfield U mascot, with the men's and women's basketball team members. There's going to be a Pop-A-Shot there, some giveaways, and it just sounds like a fun experience for our kids to drop in on, and I am extremely mortified that I don't have the date. Secondly, and this is just a really valuable reminder of the facilities discussion that Mr. Asa just referenced, and how this really is big vision, because while we're having this facilities discussion, the Parks and Rec did just receive and accept, that doesn't mean they are approving, but they did accept the master plan officially that has been in the works since the fall of 2021. That had 3 public workshops, opportunities for electronic input on the priorities of the town for what they're looking for in their recreation facilities. So we have accepted the plan, and going forward, there is going to be a presentation of all the town bodies at a single meeting, and by that I mean the Board of Selectmen, the Board of Finance, and the RTM, that will be presented and apprised of what we in the Parks and Rec have been following. I can only imagine the nature of that conversation, but what Parks and Rec is planning to do, it came up in discussion, the interest in forming a subcommittee of Parks and Rec to really kind of take a fine-tooth comb, because the master plan is really, I'll call it aspirational, but that doesn't mean it's necessarily cohesive. And I'll give the simplest of examples. One of the things that came out through surveys was an interest in dog parks. Well, the master plan has resulted, I believe, in 6 dog parks. And so that is a very simple example of something that now the Parks and Rec Commission will take a look at and say, do we need 6? Are these the 6 we want? Do we want? And so those are the kinds of details that that they're going to try to start to take a look at. But when we talk about our own waterfall, some of these facilities are things that our school teams use, that are sometimes on our school sites. And so there's just a lot of overlap, not only in terms of town investment, but how we see ourselves moving forward. So as things come up related, to school or to the children of our school, I'll keep apprising the board of that. But just wanted to update you that at the Parks and Rec meeting, it was referenced that this all town bodies meeting would take place in November. But it's going to be, I know that First Selectwoman Chuck Kupchak told Parks and Rec that, obviously this is a very busy time right now, and so trying to pull together a meeting of that nature is going to be quite an undertaking, but that's what we were told would be the next step with this master plan.
Thank you, Mrs. Mazzucchelli. And I'm just going to pass along a little information that was raised to me from the SEPTA president, just about, if it comes up in a meeting, accessibility of playgrounds. There was a concern actually expressed about the Mill Hill Playground, which is an all-accessible playground that was donated, that there isn't a level path to it. And a simple request, which I think that she reached out to Mr. Calabrese, was just on the town website that lists the playgrounds, just to maybe note which ones are accessible. So if parents wanted to, take their children to the playground, they would know which one would be easy to access. Mr. Peterson.
Hi, just a few things. I can't remember whether this was, I talked about this in the last meeting. Board of Finance approved our roof projects that we presented to them. Board of Finance is going to be meeting again on Tuesday. One of the discussions is going to be the upcoming budget season, trying to get everyone on board for that going forward. Finance Committee is going to meet on the 2nd. I guess we're going to have to fight Ms. Guernsey for space. Special Project Standing Building Committee was canceled. I guess the only other thing that I would say is I've been invited to come speak to Dwight on Thursday night at 7 o'clock. Try to listen to families and answer whatever questions I can. And I've been told by their PTA president that Mike Testani was invited and will attend too. So report to follow. Yes, the 27th.
Thank you, Mr. Peterson. And to follow up, the RTM approved all of our projects last night that, our roofs, the vestibule, I think. So that's all moving forward. So I thank all three town bodies for really just putting us on their agendas so we could get those projects approved. And again, to Mr. Morbido and to Mr. Papa George for taking the initiative to get those things forward, and hopefully before they're inundated with all those HVAC grant applications. All right, moving on to open board comment. Anybody? Well, Dr. Tracy, this is your last meeting, which seems like it's really, I'm sitting here going, wow, like this is on behalf of the board and our community, once again, I just really want to say thank you so much for your leadership and for heeding the call once again and coming and leading us, through another transition. I am sure that you were not expecting the amount of work that we and potential controversy that we put at your feet, but you took it up with grace, with intelligence, with humor. Always a good listener to everyone at this table and to the community, and thank you. Thank you very much for your leadership and for your support of our district.
Thank you for that. You're very kind. This actually is my idea of a good time, and but I do appreciate all your kind words. These experiences always come with the unexpected. That's most of these jobs. But you've been very kind and supportive, and I want to thank my colleagues, many of whom are here in helping me understand what has been going on and what can go on for the kids in Fairfield. So thank you again.
And you're not totally done. We have at least another week. You have a long list, Mr. Asaf.
And just if Dr. Tracy thought Halloween was his last day, for people in the public to know that he has offered to attend the November 2nd State Board of Ed meeting with Mr. Testani and several of us that will be there. So thank you for offering to do that.
Okay, seeing no other open board comment, we'll take it to the public. I invite any members of the public who would like to give comment on any of the agenda items to please come forward.
Bob Smoller, president of the FEA, and also happen to be a member of the math department. I just want to echo first my thanks to Dr. Tracy for a wonderful job that he's done this month. It's been a pleasure working with him. And I also want to echo Ms. Maxine Kennelly's comment about how grateful the math department was to have an opportunity to meet with Dr. Rasmussen, Dr. Zavajanic, and Dr. Tracy to have a very open and frank conversation about illustrative math. The reason I'm at the board is just to assure you, you have a truly tremendous math department who is collaborative and discusses student issues every day. And we have terrific liaisons in every single building who provide terrific leadership to the departments. And, you know, we will be able to, on a dime, when given permission and guidance, to get really good math instruction and have already been given good math instruction to students. We just need the guidance from the district as to how to move forward. I think some of my colleagues who are liaisons, to give you some more comfort, may comment on what would happen from our perspective if things were to change tomorrow, because I know that was a question that you all had. And but we feel we have the materials. We all have created notes packets and activities and practice packets and whatever that are at our ready to put in place. We just have to make sure what we're doing and when we're doing it. So I just wanted to lay your concerns. We're on it.
I decided to come at about 8 o'clock, and I decided to speak when Bob asked me to.
Just your name for the record.
Oh, I'm sorry, Jody Shannon. I'm the math lead at Fairfield Ward. So Bob asked me just to reiterate, we as a department have had a lot of conversations about the curriculum this year, and although we are all at different spots, and I am a teacher that does not have an algebra, geometry, and algebra 2, so I am not in the same situation as all of them, but through the conversations that I have had, I'm confident that the teachers can lead tomorrow and know that we will first and foremost communicate where every course is so that as a district we're all starting on the same page. Some of them may be in the middle of an IM activity that they want to finish up, but I think we need to first make sure that we have a direction for each of the courses and you know, at each level to make sure that we move forward. And I think that should really be the focus of November 8th. Not having a textbook is not a concern really of mine. We do generally, I change notes packets every single year based on the students that are in my class. So we can't adjust and just steal from a book or take from a book. So we do collaborate, and I know that we have those resources available whether or not we have a physical textbook or not. I know that that does change teacher to teacher, but that's the majority of us, and that was a concern, I think, of the middle school to some extent, but we will make sure that every algebra, geometry, and algebra 2 teacher has what they need to kind of move us forward and get in the right direction.
Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Michelle Formato. I'm the math resource teacher at Fairfield Woods Middle School, and I, too, am here to allay your fears of the teachers can, on a dime, turn things around and help our students. These teachers know the algebra, geometry, and algebra 2 curriculum like the back of their hand. I do feel that illustrative mathematics, some of the activities within there are valuable. I think given the time, the teachers to explore them, I do see that we will have some success with that. I was not part of I was part of the middle school decision. I was not actively in the high school, but one of my teachers in our building was, and he was all for IM. He was really interested in it, and he actually used it last year. So I think it's just a matter of educating teachers on how to best use it. But I just know that the teachers, we have a great staff across high schools and middle school, and we're collaborating. And I think that's one of the great things that's come out of this, as we teach algebra at the middle school level, and I used to teach at high school, so I have connections with teachers there. So I think we've bridged, you know, we have a good partnership, and we will work together with the algebra middle school teachers and the algebra high school teachers, along with geometry and algebra, to make sure that our students will be prepared for the SAT. And you know, there might have been a little hiccup at the beginning of the year, but I'm confident that we will be able to move forward and our students will be prepared successfully for SAT.
Thank you.
Can you hear me? Minnie Zakia, Tomlinson Middle School, I'm a math resource teacher as well, and math coach. And I agree with what Michelle Formato just said. We will definitely work with our teachers and Dr. Rasmussen to ensure the program will be rigorous and challenging and entertaining and, all that we want it to be. We will definitely, I've been educator for Tomlinson at Fairfield Public Schools for 27 years. So, I know a lot of you well. We stand by that. We want to make sure our children are prepared. We want to prepare them for the high school courses, for life, for everything, with the mind of the vision of the graduate. I was on the committee for those, the resources last year, and it was a very, very great process. And I've been on the process every time we've done it in the district. So, we do want the rigor, we want the engagement, we want the student discourse. So we did like the activities that were in the IM resource, and we will do whatever we need to do to make sure that our students are prepared. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, my name's Kevin Walsh, and I want to thank the board for taking the time to delve into this IM issue. I first learned of this issue day 2 of this new school year. On day 3, I was on the phone with Ward, finding out what was going on. The day after Labor Day, I had a one-on-one meeting, actually with my wife and I, with Dr. Rasmussen, and all the fears and everything that you brought up tonight was brought up in that meeting. He promised me that this was not the case. Well, here we are 9 weeks later, and it's the case. So I thank you for all doing this. Unfortunately, it's 9 weeks too late. I also want to say that I don't think that there's anybody in Fairfield who does not have faith in the people that step in front of that classroom every day to teach our children, because they're doing it. It's something that I could never do. So I want to thank them, because I have full faith that going forward, we're going to be okay. But I beg of you, please, keep digging. Find out why this happened. Why were our children used as guinea pigs again? It's unfathomable that this decision was made. Now, maybe the wool was pulled over on your eyes. It's very possible. But please keep digging, because we're very interested to find out why this happened to our children, and it will never happen again. And I will I will call for Paul Rasmussen's resignation immediately. Thank you very much.
Anybody else? All right, seeing none. And just for the public, latitude there, that we do not address personnel issues like that. We do not keep it personal. It's more of, the broader topics to the district. But I thank you all for staying to the end and for sharing your thoughts. And as always, you can reach out to the superintendent and copy board leadership. And with that, a motion to adjourn. Ms. Jacobson, seconded by Ms. Guernsey. All in favor? Motion carries.